to us about his social media anti-censorship act, aka SMACA. Um, Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the BRUNDLECAST. I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Rebbe doooovid and Rebbe Norvin. And we are pleased to welcome a very special guest tonight, Attorney Josh Smith. He's here to talk to us about his social media anti-censorship act, aka SMACA. This is a proposal that would prohibit censorship of lawful speech on major social media platforms. Josh, how are you doing tonight?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Good.
So can you give us your elevator speech on what SMACA is and why it's necessary?
Sure. Like you were saying, SMACA is a legislative proposal requesting that Congress pass a law that would prohibit censorship of lawful speech on major social media platforms. Of course, we all know the censorship on social media is a huge problem. It is the most important political issue of our time, probably, whether or not people want to believe that because they think social media is trivial or whatnot. It is the most important issue of our time. Social media is extremely important for influencing politics. It is only becoming more and more important for influencing politics. To understand that this is the case, you just need to see what the left's actions and reactions are regarding social media. The left sees that social media is extremely important, and so it wants to get the right wing off of social media. They're not just doing that because they sort of randomly decided that they were going to focus on social media as the medium in which they're going to they're going to try to censor us. They didn't roll a die and it came up social media, and so now they're just going to try to get us off of social media. They know that if they are successful in censoring us off of the major social media platforms, they will control information flow essentially throughout the world, and they will have what will essentially be a frictionless propaganda network that will be that the right wing will be unable to counter in any way. This will allow them complete and total dominance over the political narrative and over the media narrative on a daily basis, and will ultimately decimate the Republican Party. And I mean that in the 90% sense, not in the 10% sense. It will do that extremely quickly. And it will not really be something that the Republican Party could recover from. It will make the Republican Party non-viable as a national political party.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of one of these things where social media giants, I think, as we all know, have they're run by liberals, staffed by liberals, leftists, whatever you want to call it, and yet it played a integral part in the election of Donald Trump. What do you see the crackdown? I guess how do you see the relationship between Donald Trump's successful use of social media and the crackdown against conservatives on these platforms?
Well, the left was caught off guard by Trump's election in 2016. They realized that social media was an integral part of that, and they are not going to allow that to happen again. They are already they are in the process of this. They are engaging in this process of censoring the right wing off of social media, and it's a gradual process. That's what makes it so difficult to combat successfully. I'll get into that a little more in a second, but if you look at some of the recent elections, we won't even talk about 2016. Let's talk about the midterms that we just had. A lot of those races were decided by very small margins, 1%, 2%. There are countless, and those are just the congressional elections. Think also about all of the state and local elections that were decided by such close margins. It would be idiotic to believe that the rampant censorship of conservatives that we've seen on social media has not influenced these elections in such a way that it was actually determinative of who won various congressional, state, or local elections. It's quite, to me at least, it's quite obvious that this has affected political races in a way that, whereas a Republican might have won if conservatives were allowed to have a social media presence, because they are not, the Republican candidate has lost their race. This, of course, is the epitome of election interference. Interference the left complains about. This is just, I don't think you could get any, you really can't interfere any more than that. But that is what is going on. And you can try to chalk it up to all kinds of things, but in races that are very close, when you look at the fact that the Democrats and their supporters have unfettered access to social media and can say and do whatever they want without fear of any kind of repercussions, whereas the right is completely stopped from effectively and efficiently disseminating their messages and networking amongst themselves. So obvious what's going on here, and the fact that the GOP has not stopped it or attempted to stop it in some way. And there really is, like I said, there is only one way to stop it, which is federal legislation. The fact that they haven't, it's unforgivable. People like to say that the GOP is a party that likes to, they don't just like to lose, they have a fetish for losing. Nothing makes them happier than when they lose.
With dignity, of course.
Is there really a such thing?
No, but they imagine there is.
They imagine there is, yeah. And like I said, they have a fetish for it. It's disgusting. And the fact that they have controlled the entire federal government for 2 years and did not take that opportunity to protect their supporters' voices on what is now the de facto town square, i.e. major social media platforms, is just, to say it's inexcusable would be a vast understatement.
Yeah.
It is one of the most blunderous things I have ever seen.
Right. So okay. So the other, one of the things that has,
if I sound dismayed, by the way, it's because I am. I'm just extremely disgusted by the GOP and
their complete failure to take action on this issue.
Yes, all they had to do was pass a simple law, and to say it's inexcusable would be a vast understatement.
Yeah.
It is one of the most blunderous things I have ever seen.
Right. So okay. So the other, one of the things that has,
if I sound dismayed, by the way, it's because I am. I'm just extremely disgusted by the GOP and
their complete failure to take action on this. Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the BRUNDLECAST. I'm joined by my
federal government for 2 years and did not take that opportunity to protect their supporters' voices on what is now the de facto town square, i.e. major social media platforms, is just, to say it's inexcusable would be a vast understatement.
Yeah.
It is one of the most blunderous things I have ever seen.
Right. So okay. So the other, one of the things that has,
if I sound dismayed, by the way, it's because I am. I'm just extremely disgusted by the GOP and
their complete failure to take action on this issue.
Yes, all they had to do was pass a simple law. And why would you not? Why would you not want the speech of your supporters to be protected?
Well,
what
I think
you not to want that.
Oh, I was going to say, I think your Twitter handle tells the whole story. My private company, or my private but my private company.
Yeah,
this fetishization of corporatism.
Yes, people have been gaslit very badly by this this libertarian conservative nonsense of they're a private company, so they get to do whatever they want. This, of course, is absurd. That's not been the case since 1964, at least, with the Civil Rights Act. The Civil Rights Act says that the private companies can't discriminate on various bases, including, for example, race and whatever. And that's been around since 1964. And so when you have the Civil Rights Act, you're telling people you can't do what you have a private business. You can't do whatever you want. If whatever you want means not serving somebody who's black, for example. So this is, the private business ship sailed a long time ago. And even though that's the case, the Republicans would rather allow the left to have it both ways than to basically say, well, you chose not to let private businesses do whatever they want. So we're not going to have it both ways. We're going to use that new rule to our advantage.
Yeah. So let me ask you: do you think it's just? I mean, it seems you're sort of implying like either an incapability to do something about it, or they're sort of held hostage by their own principles, or do you think there's something more cynical at play on the part of Republican failure?
I think it could be a number of things. what we do know is that it's not a lack of capability. They had a majority in each house of Congress, and they had a majority. I'm sorry, and they have a majority on the Supreme Court. Not that matters for our purposes here, but they also have that now, and they control the White House. They control, they controlled 30-something state legislatures, almost enough for to do constitutional amendments. It's not for a lack of capability. They had that capability. They don't anymore, or at least they won't in January because they lost the House. But they did. So that's not it. I think it's partly because of what you said. Their own principles get in the way. Their principles, of course, are stupid. They're not really principled. They just don't really understand that if you are silenced and destroyed, it doesn't matter if you stuck to your principles, whatever you think your principles are. You have to, in order to even engage in this political battle, you have to protect. You don't get, it doesn't matter how good your position is in a game of chess if you get checkmated. Is just, to say it's inexcusable would be a vast understatement.
Yeah.
It is one of the most blunderous things I have ever seen.
Right. So okay. So the other, one of the things that has,
if I sound dismayed, by the way, it's because I'm just extremely disgusted by the GOP and
their complete failure to take action on this issue.
Yes. All they had to do was pass a simple law. And why would you not? Why would you not want the speech of your supporters to be protected?
Well, I think
you not to want that.
Oh, I was going to say, I think your Twitter handle tells the whole story. My private company, or my private but my private company. This fetishization of corporatism. Yes,
people have been gaslit very badly by this libertarian conservative nonsense of they're a private company, so they get to do whatever they want. This, of course, is absurd. That's not been the case since 1964, at least, with the Civil Rights Act. The Civil Rights Act says that the private companies can't discriminate on various bases, including, for example, race and whatever. And that's been around since 1964. And so when you have the Civil Rights Act, you're telling people you can't do what you have a private business. You can't do whatever you want. If whatever you want means not serving somebody who's black, for example. So this is, the private business ship sailed a long time ago. And even though that's the case, the Republicans would rather allow the left to have it both ways than to basically say, well, you chose not to let private businesses do whatever they want. So we're not going to have it both ways. And we're going to use that new rule to our advantage.
Yeah. So let me ask you, do you think it's just, it seems you're sort of implying like either an incapability to do something about it, or they're sort of held hostage by their own principles? Or do you think there's something more cynical at play on the part of Republican failure?
I think it could be a number of things. What we do know is that it's not a lack of capability. They had a majority in each house of Congress, and they had a majority. I'm sorry, and they have a majority on the Supreme Court. Not that matters for our purposes here, but they also have that now, and they control the White House. They control, they controlled 30-something state legislatures, almost enough for to do constitutional amendments. It's not for a lack of capability. They had that capability. They don't anymore, or at least they won't in January because they lost the House. But they did. So that's not it. I think it's partly because of what you said. their own principles get in the way. Their principles, of course, are stupid. They're not really principled. They just don't really understand that if you are silenced and destroyed, it doesn't matter if you stuck to your principles, whatever you think your principles are.
Yeah.
You have to, in order to even engage in this political battle, you have to protect. It's you don't get, it doesn't matter how good your position is in a game of chess if you get checkmated. You can't be like, well, my pawn structure is great.
Well, I guess my point is, can they be convinced in some way or bribed in some way by the donor class or these social media companies? And I want to say this, and maybe this is actually the segue for this. The social media companies themselves are but one layer of this problem, right? I mean, Stripe, Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, and their, terms of service and the leverage they apply to social media platforms like WordPress, for instance, for blogs. I know the case recently of Jay Dyer getting deplatformed off WordPress, or because PayPal or something like that told WordPress they would pull their ability to use that payment processing.
Yeah, I mean that's one aspect. I try to keep the social media aspect separate from the other internet services, because they're going to require a different legislative solution to fix than the social media. Social media will require its own specific legislative solution. The other sort of internet services will require another solution. And so the phrasing that I like to use, I refer to the social media, what's going on with social media as censorship, and I refer to the other services as deplatforming, just as a shorthand to separate those two things out. But yes, they do have some overlap in the sense that, in sort of what you're talking about. But they are problems that is a problem that SMACA does not address, because it would be difficult, if not impossible, to address the censorship problem and the deplatforming problem in one piece of legislation. They just require different legislative approaches to it.
Okay, so this is
also they're while I'm very and I'm very clear about this, while the social media censorship problem only has one solution, which is it has to be done through Congress. With certain aspects of the deplatforming problem, specifically the ones that relate to financial services, there may be other ways to deal with that. It may be
agency regulation.
Yes, it may be possible for agencies to step in. It may be possible for the president to issue certain executive orders that may at least provide some sort of partial relief that doesn't necessarily involve congressional action. But that isn't the case with the censorship problem, specifically because of Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. There's just no way around that.
So under the SMACA as currently proposed by you, with the understanding that there's this separate, as you call it, deplatforming issue, would there be aspects of the sort of the citizens' social media presence or experience that would still be subject to discrimination by these companies without that sort of that second step of legislation or regulatory action that we're talking about?
Well, with regard to the major social media platforms, not really. Those services, the major social media services are, at least as far as I'm aware, they are offered free of charge to users, and so there really is no kind of deplatforming problem that they would have to worry about. It's just the censorship aspect there that causes us the problem. It's when there are the deplatforming problem comes into play when basically you're dealing with services that are off of the major social media platforms. When people are trying to run their own website, for example, or
a personal PayPal account versus
like
PayPal being able to leverage WordPress into denying specific users access.
Yes, I mean, PayPal isn't going to be able to tell, with something like SMACA in place, PayPal isn't going to be able to tell Twitter, we're going to cut you off.
Right.
They don't have that kind of leverage to do that over companies like Twitter or YouTube, or to the extent they even use a service like PayPal. I don't even think they do. So I think those companies are pretty much, everything is handled sort of in-house.
Right. Doovid, you had a question about this is a human right. Doovid.
Yeah, it was more a question of framing it. So, I mean, you're making it pretty simple, and a lot of it's straightforward. But if you're framing it and saying like this should be a human right, or like constitutional amendment to the way the U.S. system works, is basically you'll wait till the court cases reach the Supreme Court till they decide, and
there won't be any court cases about it. Like I was saying, this Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act is essentially an absolute bar to any kind of judicial involvement, and the courts are very clear about it. This is not something in which the judiciary can be expected to grant. They cannot and will not grant us any kind of relief here because of Section 230 of the CDA. Also, when people say, well, we have a conservative court now. No, we have an originalist court now. And the thing about originalists is they aren't judicial activists for the right. They're originalists. And what that means is that they do their job properly, like a judge is supposed to. But that only looks like they're doing right-wing stuff because they're just undoing the excesses of the left-wing judges that came before them. So they're just sort of setting things back to where they're supposed to be. They won't go activist to the right because that's not how originalists think about these kinds of things. Originalists don't believe in that. The last person on the court that might be considered a judicial activist to the right in some way would be Justice Scalia, but not only to an extent. And he's dead now. So there really isn't anyone else on the court that I would consider to be in that mold. And it would be willing to sort of go against the plain text of Section 230 or do something like find it a constitutional right to social media. And not to mention that wouldn't really work anyway. Because I mean, look how detailed SMACA is. I mean, just in the summary, it's there. It's a full page worth of it's a full page worth of things. It deals with all these various types of circumstances, all these different kinds of censorship. Deals with shadow banning and bans, shadow bans, suspensions, throttling, demonetization, all these various things. This is why you need a legislative solution, because this is what legislatures do. They create policies that deal with a wide array of potential circumstances. And the problem with judicial remedies is that, number one, they only apply to the case that's in front of the court. So, for example, if you were saying, well, the court can grant some kind, if the court could do something about a case in which somebody was shadow banned, well, then their remedy would only apply to shadow banning and not any of the other things that we need coverage on. Also, judicial orders, judicial remedies are not suited to situations like this. Because a judge is not going to be able to, number one, figure out all of the circumstances that a potential order would need to cover. And they're not going to have the authority to do that. You can't just have a judge make some sort of sweeping pronouncement as to how social media is going to work. It's just not going to happen. And
when I was looking at it, if you look at, there's some fundamental human right that is being violated by this censorship, as opposed to just leaving up to the companies or how they're doing it and currently it might be against the right, or however the current politics, who it favors, versus saying there is this universal human right that should be applicable in the web, and we need to put legislation in. And I don't know if that's your framing. If you're
it's hard to explain to people. Sort of a lot of the time when you try to explain SMACA to them, they don't exactly. A lot of people don't get it right away because it doesn't really work in the same way a lot of other statutes work. People say things like, "Well, that if a statute like SMACA would mean that the government is regulating, it's deciding what speech is lawful or not." No, that's not what it's doing. The Constitution already tells us which speech is lawful and which speech isn't. There are certain rules that the First Amendment that the court has handed down in its through various First Amendment cases that tell us the rules and standards that apply to which speech is protected or not under the First Amendment. And what SMACA does is it basically says if the speech is lawful, in other words, if it's protected speech, then the major social media platforms can't censor it. That's it. It doesn't create any substantive determination in itself as to what speech is lawful or not. That's already done by the First Amendment. So the way you have to look at it is, people like to say that the First Amendment doesn't apply to private companies. Right. It doesn't. So what SMACA does is it creates a statutory right, a statutory free speech right that does apply to private companies and binds them just like the First Amendment binds the government. And we create statutory rights all the time. And not all rights are constitutional in nature. A statutory right is, for example, would be a right to welfare. If you make under a certain amount of money or something like that, and you meet these qualifications, you qualify for welfare, and that's a statutory right.
Well, Alex, I'm not a lawyer, but I was just talking about more a framing issue because obviously you're not talking to a bunch of lawyers.
Doovid, you are Jewish, so that makes you like at least half a lawyer.
Well, yeah, I know a lot of lawyers. My mother's a lawyer. Yeah, I'm a Talmud Pilpul master. But yeah, I was just talking about a greater framing for the larger audience, and it's saying, okay, if you were speaking to a left-wing audience, could you say the exact same thing except change a few words around, and as opposed to just some sort of universal framing that really should be like left, right, doesn't matter your politics. This is a universal human right. We don't want these companies to get too powerful or to control it. And the only way is to make some sort of universal declaration about what's a human right on the internet.
That's one way to try it. Of course, the problem is that the left doesn't really believe in free speech anymore. They don't care about it. And even when it affects them, it doesn't affect enough of them to override their desire to censor the right. In other words, if a few, leftists happen to themselves get censored, that's not enough to override the left's desire to crush, to squelch out hate speech off of the internet. So in the mind of the left, they're okay with whatever incidental censorship their own side has to take as a result. They don't care.
You have a separate expertise on the state of censorship, or you're just a lawyer, you're promoting this, or do you have a separate state of expertise where you've studied the current state of censorship and who the power players are in the interest that be?
Well, I'm not exactly sure of what you're asking, but I'm aware of who's leading the efforts to censor on the internet.
Well, that's actually so.
I mean, what about
hold on one second, Doof. 1 second. Is it the social media companies themselves, or are the social media companies under pressure from, let's just say, like Visa, MasterCard, and they're just doing?
I would say the ADL,
the ADL.
It's the ADL, SPLC et al. That's where the pressure is coming from.
How does like the Pittsburgh shooting play into the the dynamics at play? Like, I mean, is it every time we have sort of an exogenous event like that, like the ratchet just turns like one notch further?
I think it's just an excuse to expedite the turning of, the turning of the ratchet, but the ratchet turns regardless. The ratchet has for years now, and it will continue to turn. It's not going to stop. It will only accelerate, actually. And every time something like that happens, it's used as a convenient excuse to, get a couple more cranks in real fast.
Well, so the ADL is just an arm, and saying because maybe there's Jews, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Jews that are more prone to make phone calls, call their senator, write letters. So after the Pittsburgh shooting, hundreds of thousands of Jews made phone calls and wrote letters, as opposed to other shootings. But I don't think the ADL is the big power play. And if you look at, not even conspiracy theory, because it's on Wikipedia. Like Peter Thiel has been the head of the steering committee for Bilderberg for like over 10 years. And we know that the Google, Facebook, you just give the list of the people who've been in those meetings and saying whether they, the ADL is not a member of Bilderberg. Mark, if you're talking about a cabal of high tech people like your Google, Facebook, Twitter, whoever, if these people are making secret meetings versus the ADL, that's basically a tool that I don't see them being a big power player there.
Well, they're working directly with these social media companies. In fact, they have a lead role with these in working with these social media companies to fight hate.
I'm saying because we're Jews, we've been tracking anti-Semitism. That's what we do, and it's saying we've been tracking it before the government was tracking hate, and generally, we're better at it than the government. Even say like the FBI, you could look it up. Like the FBI teams up with the ADL. But that's really the only thing we're good at is tracking this stuff. We don't actually have a power play. So when Google, Facebook, and these places are looking around, like who's really good at doing this, it's like, okay, the use is really.
Well, they weren't really looking for who's good at doing this because these organizations came to these companies and said, you need to do something about this, and we'll work with you so that you can do something about this. But if you don't do something about this, we're never going to let it go.
Yeah, so the ADL
is for you.
The ADL has somewhat been corrupted.
Well, it's essentially a type of racketeering, if you will.
But I mean, the ADL is just an arm. It's not the the money and power you're talking about.
I think
Zuckerberg and Brin.
Well, Frame Games is very good at describing that. How the ADL it's just one. It's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to.
ADL is just a nonprofit organization.
Yeah, the thumb of the giant.
Well, I mean, he's referring to what most people would just call Jews, and Frame Game tries to divert to the diversity industry, but most people in these circles would just be like, it's the Jews. But yeah, I mean, the ADL is just a non-charity that begs money, saying like if you're in the Jewish community, the ADL begs you money.
Well, I will say, speaking of blaming Jews for this, one of my mods in the chat brings up a good point. Well, it's a question, really, and I'd like to get to hear what you have to say, Josh. He says, SMACA is insurmountably smeared by being associated with Paul Nealon.
No, it isn't. Paul, look, the fact of the matter is, Paul Nealon, you can, I mean, look, if you had the cure for cancer, and it just so happened that, I don't know, Adolf Hitler was the one who developed it, would you rather die or would you take the fucking cure?
Well, I would take the fucking cure.
Well, let's find out what your mod thinks.
Well, I'm sure the mod would take. Look, the mod would take the cure too. I think the issue is that.
And who are the people that aren't taking the cure? Who are the people that are dying?
The Republican Party.
Then we need to crush them because that's not rational.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're not sounding rational here because you're saying if your goal is to get this legislation passed, who cares about the Republicans or all this other politics?
Who cares about where it came from? The idea is what matters. The idea
are
is
you
flawless.
Neutral? But are you? I mean, you don't have to be neutral, but you mean,
and I'm not.
But don't you think this legislation would be better off if it had, so to say, bipartisan, neutral support that just made logical sense?
It won't because those people. It won't because those people are pussies. They present no threat to the establishment, and so they don't have to worry about being censored.
You're just trying to jam down legislation. Then it's saying you want broad-based agreement among the populace of
I
people
don't
that
care about
disagree.
broad-based agreement. What I'm saying is either SMACA gets passed or everybody on the right gets censored off of social media and then eventually the internet. Those are the choices. There isn't some sort of middle ground here. There isn't an alternative. Those are the choices. And
I think you're kind of scaremongering. It's fine. I mean, you could have your politics.
I hope people are scared. They should be scared. This is how communism wins.
Between someone who's coming at and you're warning people about impending danger and this is the only solution to it, versus being a defender of human rights.
I don't care about.
You're trying to defend human rights for all people.
No, I don't care about that because, frankly, I don't want to defend the rights of communists who want us dead. I'm not interested in defending.
But they would benefit. You mean you do agree that the communists and other socialists and other people that are suffering the same censorship would benefit from what you're trying to do?
There would be, yes, they would benefit from that. But that's not the motivation here. The motivation is to preserve the right wing from complete and total destruction, to preserve America and
I mean that's why I'm nonpartisan.
From complete and total destruction.
You're logical. I just think I'm thinking in nonpartisan terms and the practicality of getting it done.
It's not nonpartisan. It's not a nonpartisan idea.
Why
because
can't you address this as a nonpartisan issue?
Because the censorship is not occurring in a nonpartisan way.
Well, that is okay. So
why market it to the why would I market this to the 100 left-wing people who are being censored as opposed to the tens of millions of right-wing people who are? No, why exactly am I doing that?
Because you're saying like Black Life Matters and I'm saying all life matters.
I don't believe Black Lives Matter.
But I mean, but you're saying you're scared about your people because your people are being censored, as opposed to being scared about censorship in general because it's a human right, something moral, something that you could agree upon with your enemy.
I'd rather not dress it up as something like that because that's not what's going on here. This is what you have here is communists are trying to censor and destroy anybody they perceive as politically disagreeable, and they are willing to do whatever it takes in order to accomplish that. And all of a sudden I'm supposed to be concerned about some sort of general no, we're preserving the basic ability of the right to communicate and to participate in the political process at all.
Yeah, but so you're saying, are you extending your arm out to me, even though we might disagree on a bunch of issues because you need help getting this passed? Or you're saying that no,
well, we don't need help from the left in getting it passed, or at least we didn't. And why not? Because the right controlled the government. That's the only thing the right controls.
Yeah,
they control the government, the left controls the private sector.
You're saying like, oh, I'm going to get this passed with 51 votes. And it's saying, no, and you got to retake America. You got to have broad-based consensus. No,
you only need last time I checked, you only need 50% plus one.
I mean, let's say that somehow your name is attached to this legislation and eventually comes past, and it's the Smith Amendment, and everyone in America calls it that. And you're saying you want your legislation to know that it got passed by 51 votes, or you want to know that your amendment got passed by 90+% of the House and Senate.
I only care that it gets passed. I don't care how it gets passed.
Yeah, I guess it's like Brett Kavanaugh sitting there like on the court, or even the Democratic ones. You're like, okay, they're on the Supreme Court. Does it matter that a large portion of people didn't want them there versus the people who got confirmed with like 90+.
And Brett Kavanaugh's decisions are as binding as any other. His vote is has as much value as if he had been confirmed 100-0. It doesn't matter. It's the same. You don't get any extra credit in this regard.
Yeah, but it does lead to credibility and strength of the legislation and the predictability that it might last long term if it had broad-based support than just passed by one vote.
I don't care if it lasts long term. If the
like
Democrats,
Obamacare got repealed.
If the Democrats take power and they repeal it, oh well, that we're right back to the status quo where we are now. That's the worst that can happen. People, one of the things that people mistakenly say a lot is that they say, well, this could be used against us if it could backfire if the Democrats were to take power. No, it can't, because that would literally be impossible, because this is an anti-censorship law, and the Democrats just want to censor. They want to do more censorship, not less. So this law would not serve their purposes at all. In order for them to do what they want to do, they'd have to repeal it. And that's the worst that they could do.
Do you mind if I quickly come in?
Yeah, welcome Babylonian Hebrew, our third Jewish panelist.
Oh, thank you. Good to see everyone. How's everyone doing tonight? So yeah, Mr. Smith and Mr. Doovid, yeah, fascinating conversation. There are times at different points when I've agreed with different various things that either of you have said, and I mean, I haven't really been listening that closely, but I just have to push back against one thing. First of all, to my knowledge, there are no communists, really. And second of all, it's the capitalists who are censoring people and destroying people's lives, like Stripe, MasterCard, Google, Facebook. These are capitalists. These Twitter. These are all big capitalists. These are neoliberal capitalists. These people are not, if they were acting anything close to communists,
if they were acting in a capitalist fashion, and something like social media. Social media benefits. Social media platforms derive their value from the number of people who are using the platform. More people equals more dollars for social media. It's not in any way a capitalist decision to, I don't know, let's see, censor half of your users off of your platform. In fact, Twitter, for example, has never been run as a business. It's never made a penny in profit, and it just has unlimited, bottomless money from leftist investors who don't mind if they lose billions, because it allows them control over the flow of information. They're willing to absorb that loss. YouTube is not profitable. Google absorbs YouTube's losses. So it's not they make these decisions not in order to, not for capitalist reasons, in other words, to maximize their profits, but solely to engage in political objectives that have nothing to do with profit.
Yeah, sometimes I think that is the case, and sometimes I think these places are, even if it's not necessarily driven by profit. I think that sometimes these things are either, if not directly driven by profit, they're driven by things like publicity, where it will be like, let's say a bunch of a rapid fire barrage of activists call, let's say, the people who provide advertisement for a company, and then the advertisers will pull out, which hurts them financially, and therefore they censor people, which may not actually be the logical thing to do to get them more money in the long term. But I think that it might sort of be, in a lot of instances, kind of yes, there is a component of it being purely ideological, but I think that on top of that, there certainly is a financial component to this entire thing, and I think
for the capitalist,
regulation is necessary, is my point. And also, what are your thoughts on, like, for instance, antitrust type policies in terms of like internet payment processing and stuff like that? I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Well, with one of the great capitalist, pro-capitalist things about SMACA is that, when you look at how much do you think that these companies, these major social media platforms, how much do you think that they spend on censorship every year?
I don't know. It depends. I know that Facebook used to do it fairly cheaply, and they used to outsource the censors themselves.
The answer is like tens of millions of dollars annually.
Yeah, I watched those whole hearings on Washington. I'm a big C-SPAN watcher, and I mean, you could still argue within capitalism that once they've got a monopoly, the calculus changes on how they increase profit, and at that point, when they've already basically won, they have to control the culture, they have to control the politics.
Right. I mean, the free market doesn't even apply to mega corporate monopolies that control primary channels of public communication.
Capitalism. Free market doesn't apply. I mean, it's like any lobby group that lobbies Congress people on both the right and the left, and people usually give Israel as the example, but the reality is every mega corporation basically owns the right and the left, and that's still capitalism at play. But once they got a monopoly,
bingo! I'm inclined to agree with Doovid on this. That is indeed still capitalism in play. What is true capitalism and what is not true capitalism? And free market.
Babs, I didn't bring you on here to be a Doovidian shill. What are you doing?
No, I came on here to destroy capitalism.
Well, the United States has never been about unrestrained capitalism. Obviously, we have rules to sort of to rein that in. And, you know, of course, when we're dealing with a situation where a company is a monopoly and they control primary channels of public communication, they can't be allowed to have, you know, unfettered autonomy in what they do. There is a certain public trust there that has to be respected. These companies are not doing that. You know, one of the aspects of that public trust is, well, when you control primary channels of public communication, you can't engage in viewpoint discrimination anymore. You just can't. And that is, you know, the thing of, well, what I wanted to say real fast.
And the only thing that can stop them is government regulation.
Well, exactly, and that's what we should talk about. Let me just write this down. Antitrust. I'm just going to write a little note to myself so I don't forget where we were. But I wanted to point out that these companies, they spend, and I say spend, I actually mean waste, tens of millions of dollars on censorship, gratuitous censorship a year. Because don't forget, these companies are protected by Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act in such a way that they don't have to censor anything. Except for things relating to sex trafficking and, you know, I suppose unlawful speech, you know, speech that is not constitutionally protected. But regardless, you know, putting that aside, all of this censorship that they do beyond that is not required by anything other than, it's not required by the law. They're just doing it because they want to do it. And they spend tens of millions of dollars annually on this because, you know, it costs, you know, they have so many employees that are, you know, thousands and thousands of employees at each of these companies who are salaried to just sit around all day and you know, and censor people. And they have all this money and resources they put into, artificial intelligence technology so that they can, so that they can censor better, more efficiently. This is a lot of money to waste every year for each of these companies, and especially when these companies aren't profitable to begin with. They don't have that kind of money to be wasting. So the thing about, you know, I mean, you think that
I know you're a lawyer, but like I worked in finance. I was a day trader. I've looked at the financials of all these companies. I'm not sure you may or may not be correct. It may not be worth arguing, but what's your benefit on speculating of the motives of these companies?
I don't care what the motive is. I'm just saying this is what they waste. And if they wanted to be profitable, they wouldn't be wasting that money. They would be doing only what they wouldn't be, engaging in, hiring thousands of employees to censor when they can't really afford that, because that's what causes them to lose money. All they have to do is get rid of those employees, get rid of those expenditures, and maybe they could be profitable. Maybe Twitter could turn a profit. Maybe YouTube could turn a profit for a change. Instead, they engage in all of this waste because they want to control the flow of information. They want to engage in political domination. That is simply unacceptable. The thing about SMACA is it basically takes it out of these companies' hands. It says, well, it's not your choice anymore. You're going to save tens of millions of dollars annually, unless you want to keep these people around to do nothing. But they can't censor lawful speech anymore, so you don't need all of these employees to censor. So you're going to be able to get rid of that and cut costs there, and you're not going to have to spend all this money on new AI technologies to deal with all of the critics that are like, you need to censor more.
Who is your ambiguous they? Because you use the word they again and again. And who do you mean when you say they?
In the sense that you mean the social media companies?
He means the ADL.
Well, I mean, I want a definition. I mean, you're talking about just the social media companies and not the ADL. You're talking about.
If I'm talking about people that are complaining about these companies not doing enough censorship, I generally mean the ADL, leftists, etc. If I'm talking about the companies themselves, it means, just from the context, if I'm referring to the companies themselves, I'm talking about the companies. But if I'm talking about people that are complaining to the companies, that would generally be interest groups like the ADL, SPLC, leftist groups in general.
And why wouldn't something like, Bilderberg make more sense? Because we know the owners of all these companies.
Fine, you can just substitute that as an shorthand. I don't care who's doing it. It just has to stop.
Okay, and that was my point in the first place. So what's the advantage of you not just framing it like a human right, just saying whoever's doing it doesn't matter. You got to stop because it's a human right. And I mean, I like conspiracy theory
Because
and
people
that's
think immigration's a human right. There are people that think that
that's why they're winning the issue.
There are people that think that incest is a human right.
Or universal basic income.
Yeah, you can't use phrases. You can't use phrases like human rights, because the second you try to invoke one of those, it's you open the floodgates to all of this. Well, what about this?
And human rights don't exist, Doovid.
Yeah, well, that's how Obamacare passed, was by making healthcare a human right.
Human rights are a bogus notion.
Yes, maybe a civil right.
It's a statutory right, and the only difference between statutory rights and constitutional rights is that it's easier to change statutory rights.
If it's human right, it exists and trumps the statutes. You can't make a statute to neglect a human right.
Hold on. In which jurisprudence recognizes human rights? Who?
Well, I mean, basically, you're saying it's God's law, and that's the system of karma. That if you go against the system of God's law, the system will collapse on you. And I mean, you could have the UN.
God doesn't recognize human rights.
Yeah, there's no
such thing.
Yeah, we're not doing this whole God's law thing. Go to Somalia and tell them about God's law with a big pile of cash.
Well, I mean, that's theology.
If you rob me, you're violating God's law.
You could be an atheist. That's not. You could be an atheist. That's not a problem.
No, that's not what he's saying.
No, that's not what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying is that's not a basis for jurisprudence. It's not a basis. You can't say, well, this is your statutes and your constitution mean nothing because God's law trumps all. Well, you want to try that, you're going to run into a lot of problems when I suppose. You're going to run into a lot of problems when Muslims say that God's law says no Jews.
Yeah, but Muslims don't say that. But I mean, the point is you might need a universal system because
Josh, just so you know, Doovid is he's a Hare Krishna, Orthodox, Hasidic,
multicultural,
conservative. I don't know, man. Look, I think, Doovid, the point here is that there is no law that Congress can pass that could be on the basis of human rights, and that would have any teeth.
Why would we even have to do that? We already have a constitutional right to freedom of speech, although that doesn't necessarily apply in the context of these private companies. It's already clear that freedom of speech is enshrined in our Constitution. It is a broader concept than just the First Amendment, and Congress has every right to protect those broader free speech interests through legislation.
Well, it's like the caravan and whether the people are legally refugees according to international law.
I don't care about international law. International law is garbage. It doesn't mean anything.
These companies are all global. So, okay, you're just talking about what these companies are going to do in the U.S. So the companies they do business in China, in Iran, in the U.S., and they have different, they have to meet the standards of the local country. So you're coming at I only care about the U.S. as long as it becomes a constitution. I mean, as long as
I'm concerned about protecting. I get what you're saying. I'm concerned about protecting America and Americans first. While I think it would be great if other countries, if the rules enshrined in SMACA applied to.
These companies are bigger
other
than
countries.
America.
The reality is that it's really up to the citizens of those countries to get their shit in order and to protect their own free speech rights. I'm not looking to export the First Amendment to the world. That's not something that I'm interested in doing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, here's the thing. If I type SMACA into Google or YouTube, the first thing that comes up is Pat Little's endorsement of it, about a month ago.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that he endorsed it.
How do you that seems Pat Little is accused of being funded. Do you know who Pat Little is?
Yes, I do.
Okay, he's being accused of being funded by Tom Steyer. I'm sure you know who Tom Steyer is.
I do.
Okay. Does that strike you as an effort to undermine what you're trying to do? Because I think Pat Little's
been heavily censored. He was a Republican political candidate for the House or for the Senate in California, and he was banned from the major social media platforms. This, of course, would be a great argument if people weren't hung up on this whole Pat Little isn't, infatuated with Jews in Israel, so we have to pretend like he doesn't exist. But there's a candidate who wasn't just shadow banned like some of these House members are saying that they were. I don't know if what they're saying is accurate or not, but we know for a fact that we have actual GOP candidates who were banned, completely silenced on these platforms. If that isn't election interference, I don't know what is. So the reality is that, Patrick Little has had to deal with this censorship. A law like SMACA would be beneficial to him. Of course, he's going to endorse it. That should hardly be surprising. Lots of people will probably endorse it that some people don't like. I don't care who endorses it. He'd be an idiot not to endorse it. Most people, anybody on the right would be an idiot not to endorse SMACA. You don't have to only get approval if you think that a law is only going to get approval from certain people and it's going to avoid anyone who's controversial from saying, I endorse that too. Well, I don't know what planet you'd be living on. In what alternate universe does that happen? Pat Little's going to have opinions on things just like anybody else.
Right. Okay.
I don't see the problem. It's like people want this. Do they want their free speech or not? Because if they don't, then they should focus on things like, well, what is Pat Little's endorsing it, or this person worked for Paul Nehlen, or whatever. All that stuff is irrelevant at this point. We're talking about people's fundamental right to free speech. If you don't have that, I call this a keystone issue. And the reason it's a keystone issue is because without free speech, you can't advocate for anything else. You have to protect your free speech first. So it has to be paramount.
Now you're sounding like I was telling you should sound.
Yeah, I'm just not saying the stupid phrases like human right and God's right.
You hit the nail on the head, Josh. Norvin, you've been listening. What do you have to add to this? Any questions for Josh? Any points you'd like to make?
Actually, I was doing other stuff. I was just in the chat. I had it muted. But no, my basic takes are, rhetorically, yeah, sure, support free speech. Like, the whole alt-right, we's the real free speech reporters. Me personally, people know my thoughts on this issue. I don't like free speech. I think it was a stupid idea to begin with. But that's a separate issue. I think that this whole SMACA thing won't go anywhere. It's just like the California seceding thing. It's like someone's got a gun pointed at you and they're across the room and you think the solution is to try to get them to take the bullets out of the gun. It's stupid. I'm sorry, I don't mean to blackpill, but you're never going to get this passed. Again, if people want to rhetorically support it to earn us some points with constitutionalist libertarians, cool. But no, I don't think shall not censor type legislation will go anywhere. It won't be allowed to go anywhere.
Well, then the Republicans simply won't be in office for much longer because they're not going to be able to get reelected because all of their supporters will be censored off of the internet. They won't be able to spread their messages. And that will result in Democrats winning all of those seats.
Well, the demographics are going to do that anyway.
Sure. That too. It's the GOP's funeral. It's really, at least, as far the way I see it, I have an obligation to try to basically say, here's what we can do. This is the solution. I brought you the solution. Yes, I'm the only one that's thought of it. There's a reason for that. But it's the only solution. And, here you go. If you want to win, this is what you do. Ignore it at your peril. That's really all I can do. I can't force people to accept it. I can't force people to make it into law. I can just give them the tools so that they can win this battle if they really want to. If they don't want to win and they want to lose, then I suppose that's their prerogative. If that's the case, we've never really had any chance anyway.
Well, yeah, my thing is just, again, if people want to support this rhetorically, maybe on a state level, we can make some noise with this, but federally, nothing like this will ever get passed.
Well, you can't make noise about it on a state level because of CDA Section 230. that would preempt
I
any
didn't
kind of
pass
state.
anything. I just make some noise, like talk about it, rile people up, stir people up over it, but it'll never actually pass into law.
I'm really not interested in doing that. I don't really want to talk about, support free speech in some sort of general, vague, free speech is good kind of sense, because that doesn't get anywhere. That won't stop any of the censorship, and ultimately, it's just kind of a waste of time.
Nothing's going to stop the censorship. Again, I'm fine with supporting it rhetorically, but a law like this will never get passed, and I think it's important that people.
Well, why do you think it's? Hold on, Norvin. Why do you think it's never going to get passed?
Well, because
Josh, you should know Norvin has been deplatformed and censored more than any of us here on this stream.
Because Norvin can't stay out of Jewish blue check marks comments and not use the K word.
Well,
that's true.
Well, that's certainly not. I mean, it's
illegal.
It takes. It's. Let me put it this way. Since I started being public about SMACA, I made a promise to tone myself down on social media to some extent. I said I won't do it completely, but I will attempt to tone myself down. It has been exceedingly difficult. It takes a lot of willpower to not want to respond to not respond to those, to the blue checks and to to all those people that you really just that you really want to respond to. It takes a lot of willpower to hold back on that. So I give you, I totally understand that if somebody doesn't want to exercise that kind of restraint and just wants to say what's on their mind, then I think that's great. Here's the thing is, we need to understand that this isn't about, this isn't like the normal kind of, they're not going to pass it because, there's other things they want to pass, and because they're not the donor, the donor class is good. Yes, we get all that. That's always the case. The reality is, though, that there will be no donor class for the Republicans for much longer if they don't pass something like SMACA, because the Republican Party won't exist for much longer. There won't be anybody to donate to them because there won't be a party to donate to. So this is an existential threat to the GOP. Either they do something to fix it now, or they will not exist in 10 years. It'll be faster than the demographics change things. Because you cannot possibly compete as a national party if you are not able to spread your messages effectively and efficiently over the internet. Period.
Yeah, we all understand that.
Do they?
Again,
do we understand it? Because when we're saying things like, when it's a given that we're not going to pass something like this, it seems to me that we don't understand it. We understand it. I was we on this stream, but we, meaning all of these people out there who are, responsible for either voting in the legislature or telling their legislators what to vote for. Do those people understand it? I don't think they do. Because if they did, this would be what they'd be telling those legislators to pass. I think that, one of the problems with fighting censorship is that it requires a lot more initiative than other issues. And there's really two reasons for that. The first is that unlike other issues where you can actually incur some sort of injury and then you can advocate to remedy that. In other words, let's say that use like immigration as an example. You get all these illegals that come in, and then so you find out the illegals are here, and then you say, we should do something about this. We can advocate to do something about this, to send them back or whatever. In that situation, you're able to advocate for the change that you want to see. The problem with censorship is once you're censored, you're out of the game. So you can't advocate against the censorship once you're already censored. So it requires more initiative. It requires a lot of a degree of proactiveness that dynamic is not present with other issues. You have to be far more proactive to fight censorship successfully. The second reason is that we generally take something like our ability to speak freely for granted. So to such a degree that it almost seems like, oh, I have to fight for this, I have to fight just to be able to speak. Yeah, you do, actually. And if you don't do that, like I said, you won't be able to advocate for anything else. So we take it for granted, and we don't realize just how important it is until it's gone. This is what usually, this is a timeless battle that occurs throughout history. The censorship versus the censorship side versus the free speech side, and the censorship side typically wins. As far as I don't think it really. I mean, what ends up happening is it wins, and there's a period of terrible repression. Lots of people are murdered. Blah blah blah. There's a revolution, and you go back to some sort of more free speech like society, and then this cycle repeats itself eventually. But censorship always wins this battle because all it requires is the other side, is that the free speech side just has to be complacent. If they don't do anything, censorship wins, and it's easier to not do anything. It's easy for people to be complacent. For the free speech side to win, you have to have people that are willing to step outside of their comfort zone and to defend people who are very unpopular. You have to be able to defend people at the extremes and say, because if you can't defend the extreme speech, you won't be able to defend at all by the time that censorship progresses to the point where it's affecting the mainstream. It's already too entrenched at that point.
What about the basic arguments? Like, I was part of a group that basically shot Richard Spencer down at University of Michigan. I mean, there were thousands of people. It was a huge event, and even people were willing to get arrested. And the basic argument that.
But are you part of Antifa?
No, but I mean, saying it wasn't Antifa that was. Antifa were the people that got arrested, but there was the ADL basically. There was a concerted effort of hundreds of people to prevent him from speaking. Antifa was just like the front line that was willing to get arrested. But there were, that thousands of students. You could just search on the YouTube. Thousands of students walked out of classes to protest the university when they said they were going to allow them to come. But that wasn't the point I was trying to make. I was talking about the argument that the leftists will use is that when what's the question, the line of hate speech. So even if you passed all your lines,
who cares about their arguments?
Well, it's like the Pittsburgh shooting. Like 70% of Jews believe that President Trump's rhetoric is directly or indirectly connected to the shooting in Pittsburgh. And just like we saw today,
one could very easily argue that that's precisely why Jews are simply ill-suited for a free Western society like the United States, and that values freedom of speech. If they can't respect it, and if they can't,
when someone says that I don't think society is good with you in it, that's already hate speech. So the idea, America is for white, that's already at the point of violence, because basically,
but it isn't.
Well, that's arguable and saying no. I mean, the fact is, people are getting shut down currently under the the idea that that is violence, because you're proposing an idea that will eventually lead to me being not wanted in this country, and that is basically violence.
That's not violence to not want somebody in this country. That's simply a desire to not want somebody in this country. Jews do have their own country,
That's irrelevant to the point. Saying whatever ones are here, saying we're here, and if you're
we're here, and fuck your First Amendment, we're going to make your speech illegal. That's what they're saying. And what are you going to do about it?
Well, they protect the First Amendment, but they're just broadening the definition of hate speech. It's just saying like
hate speech is not a legal term in America at all.
It is not a valid concept here. It does not exist in America.
Well, obviously it does. That's why that's the current law. That's why you're trying to propose this legislation.
There is no hate speech.
Official hate speech laws. He's trying to pass laws that would outlaw private companies from having terms of service.
I can tell you that if Jews, and when I say Jews, I mean Jewish groups, Jews in general, had their way, they would have hate speech laws in this country in a heartbeat.
Yeah, like
and they are actively trying to do that here. part of what we see with these terms of service is an attempt to muddy things so much that people sort of think exactly like you were thinking just now, that there is actually hate speech laws
Yeah, I mean,
in
it's
the United
incitement
States.
to violence, and you're saying that
No, it's not. Incitement to violence is a very narrow thing. It's a very narrow concept. 99.9% of what people today like to claim as incitement to violence isn't incitement to violence. It's a very narrow concept when incitement to violence is not constitutionally protected. Most of what you hear people call incitement is just constitutionally protected speech that they don't like.
Yeah, I mean, you may be right, but
I am right. No, it's not may. I am right about that. People have no concept here what incitement to violence is.
There's obviously a sizable portion on the left that disagrees.
It's not about what the left thinks. This is a constitutional principle. It's not subject to majoritarian will.
Well, to some extent it is. That's why you said you don't care as long as it passes by one vote.
That's legislation, not.
That's majority. That's you're suffering to majority and will.
Yes, you can't. That doesn't apply when we're talking about the Constitution. The government can't pass hate speech laws at all because the First Amendment to the Constitution prohibits that. Like I was saying, there are certain groups, certain types of individuals that want there to be hate speech laws in this country. And
I mean, you're a lawyer. People here don't really care about the method. You're saying so legally. If you're saying, okay, the ADL and these organizations have a goal, and because you're a lawyer, you understand the process they have to go through, so they want to widen the definition.
The fact that they are even the fact that they're even trying to undermine such a basic constitutional principle as the First Amendment means that they are not suited for a society such as the United States, which prizes freedom of speech and considers it a paramount right.
Yeah, but obviously, the powers that be, like Peter Thiel, disagrees with you.
I'm not sure what to say other than he's got to go.
You gotta say, yeah, but saying, I mean, Peter Thiel's Peter Thiel, and I mean, and you're just a guy.
If you're trying to suppress freedom of speech in America, you're a communist and you have to go.
Yeah,
it's simple. It's simple. It's not up for debate. No, my rhetoric is reactive to the rhetoric of the people that are trying to undermine the First Amendment. It's okay to be reactive to that. You can't have people in your country that are trying to subvert your basic constitutional rights and who are willingly and knowingly and intentionally trying to subvert them and don't
I disagree.
care.
I'm saying just like I don't mind, so say Patrick Little that's openly calling for the expelling of the Jews. That doesn't bother me as an American.
That's reactive. Nor does it bother
me what the ADL is winning. I'm saying
but what Patrick Little is saying is reactive to what Jews have done in this country.
Well, I'm saying you're just upset because you're at the losing end of the stick, as opposed to if you were trying to protect something universal. So you're just saying, oh man, I lost, the ADL beat me, and you're trying to come back and get back at them.
It really isn't. Well, this really isn't about beating the ADL so much as protecting freedom of speech, but the opponents of freedom of speech just happen to be, well, they're disproportionately Jewish.
Your opponents maybe, but I'm saying that
the opponents of freedom of speech. Anybody advocating for hate speech laws in the United States is an enemy of freedom of speech, period. Because
the Jews aren't the only party advocating.
They're not, but they are disproportionately involved
we might
in such
have
advocacy.
More power in numbers. That's why after the Pittsburgh shooting, hundreds of thousands of Jews.
Well, Jews are less than 2% of the population, so it's not that they have power in numbers. It's that they have influence, outsized influence.
We're the most active political body, and obviously, you're a lawyer. You didn't become a lawyer without knowing hundreds of Jews,
and those Jews want to use that political influence, that outsized political influence, to subvert basic constitutional rights, and they see no problem with that. That if that isn't a sign that that group is not suited for the framework, the political framework that America is based upon.
Well, I don't mind you saying.
It's hard to imagine what is.
I don't mind. I'm saying just like I don't mind Patrick Little. I don't mind the ADL. Can't we all just get along?
The ADL isn't saying can't we all just get along. The ADL has
neither
its
is
own agenda.
Doovid,
You're making special.
do you think it's do you support the so you were talking about the idea of hate speech? Do you personally, as an individual, I'm just curious, support the idea of a government having a hate speech policy where there could be criminal repercussions for writing certain things, saying certain things, etc.? I'm curious to hear your personal thoughts.
I don't vote, and usually I'm libertarian. I'll talk ideas or morals, and I understand process. Like
This explains everything.
I know.
So that's a no. So that's a no or a yes. Do you think that the government should be allowed to, let's say, imprison someone or give someone a talking to, or give someone some sort of criminal repercussion for saying something or writing something that's deemed hate speech?
I'm probably about as liberal on free speech. I would probably even be somewhat into the allowance of incitement to violence. That, like, I'm pretty pro free speech, and even when it comes to incitement to violence, I would probably be more liberal than a lot.
Norvin, you said you had something to say.
Yeah, on the incitement violence point that doovid was making, what would he say constitutes incitement to violence? Would just promoting criticism or hatred of a group constitute that?
No, this was specific to Richard Spencer trying to come to University of Michigan, and it was, Asians and blacks. By just saying that he wanted a white homogenous country, that's incitement to minorities, because basically the only way to get that is going to be to get rid of us.
Right. Well,
so
their argument is absurd, and it should be dismissed out of hand.
Hey. So when
that's how low IQ people think.
No, I mean, to me, it's reasonable. I mean, saying it's far down the line, but I mean, to me, I'm pretty pro free speech, but the argument makes sense that I mean, if you guys could gather around and talk and organize around deporting us, you guys might succeed. And when you succeed, then it's going to become violent.
Well, they would be deported then. If they resisted that, then it might become violent. But that's
so it doesn't matter how many chains down it is, but it's saying the speech is already in the.
Well, then literally, then their existence here is incitement to violence because they're attempting to genocide the white race. How about we do that?
Well, that's why I'm saying the ADL, could say what they want, and you could say what you want.
Right.
And then you guys have to fight it out in town square. So you're just upset that the
ADL said no. The ADL says that we can't fight it out in the town square. Only they get to talk in the town square.
Well, how did they do that?
Are you serious?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like because we're on a Jew platform right now, because we owe Sergey Brin, who came to America through Hayes. The only reason that we're talking right now is because Hayes and you're making the decision to help Sergey Brin come to America. And so, I mean, there's a lot of players in this game.
I don't think that Hayes is responsible for the existence
bringing up Sergey Brin's family to America.
Yeah, the existence of YouTube. Sergey Brin would probably have been successful regardless of where he was located. And if it wasn't him, it would have been someone else. I don't really think that.
Well, that may or may not be, but I'm saying there's a reason why the ADL beat you, and it's not saying so maybe you'll win the next round. And I don't mind. If this is about the
AD, if this is really a game where we're playing,
think like you're good and the ADL is bad.
They are bad.
To me, it's just both. The ADL thinks that you're bad and they're good. And I'm saying I'm neutral.
Right. And if the ADL, if this is a game about one side fighting the other side, then if the ADL won't fight fair, then they have to be destroyed.
Yes.
Press 1, and I don't care how that happens.
Press 1 in the chat if you'd like to see the ADL destroyed. Okay, Halsey, you've been listening to this. What do you think?
I think both arguments are a little kind of silly. Number one, the ADL silences people for sure. They're evil and whatever, but like they're not out there like killing people or whatever. They're encouraging shitlibs to kick people who aren't shitlibs off of social.
They're little Jewish women like Dianne Feinstein.
But I'm saying, like, everyone goes, well, I can't talk about this on social media, otherwise the ADL will kick me off. And where do I always hear them saying it? On social media. So
on their 50th account after they've been banned.
But I'm saying Pat Little has 2 YouTubes. He has a Gab account. He has a Minds account. He has All kinds, like every social media. Pat Little, he's the worst there is. He got Gab kicked off Microsoft. He still has his Gab account, but my friend Bomb Islam does not.
So he's on Gab. Well, that's great. You know, I don't really consider it comparable. If I said to you, you know, you can't listen, you can't speak in the public square, but there is this remote wooded area 15 miles away. And in that remote wooded area, there's a tree stump. You can go over there and you can stand on that tree stump and you can speak to your heart's content.
I
No one will hear you.
Reject what you just said. You just said on the public square. You can't stop me from speaking on the public square, but I can stop you from speaking on my front lawn.
Oh,
they own that. They own Twitter owns the company.
Weird.
They can stop you from doing whatever they want.
So Twitter's not the public square because it's a private company, but we tell private companies what to do all the time. Twitter can't, for example, refuse to hire Black people. A restaurateur can't refuse to hire Black people, even if it's his own restaurant. We tell these companies what to do all the time at various ways. When Congress passes a law saying that all construction companies have to have all of their employees wear hard hats on construction sites, that's a Congress telling private companies what to do.
I understand, but I like how you kind of veered off on that one, because all I said was it's not a public square. I didn't say Congress can't tell them what to do. I'm fine with them telling them what to do. I'm saying that at the end of the day, it's not a public square. It's not the equivalent of walking into the middle of town and saying whatever you want. It's the equivalent of walking onto someone's front lawn.
In the year 2018, it is. And in fact, in a recent Supreme Court case, Packingham versus North Carolina, a majority of the Supreme Court said that, in the past, there may have been difficulty in identifying the most important places in a spatial sense for the exchange of views. Today, the answer is clear. It is cyberspace, the, quote, vast democratic forums of the internet, end quote, in general, and social media in particular. And then it gives various statistics like 7 in 10 American adults use at least one internet social networking service. One of the most popular of these sites is Facebook, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so we have a majority of the Supreme Court here recognizing that these major social media platforms are essentially the new de facto town square. And most of the people most of these justices on the court, you know, that were in that majority are like, I don't know, 70 years old. Some are, you know, over 80 years old, and they get it. So what the fuck is your excuse?
What is my excuse?
Yeah. Why don't you get it?
What don't I get? It's just not the public square. You don't have a right to it. That's my point. I'm on my 7th YouTube.
You do if Congress says you do, and that's why we need Congress to say that.
I just don't understand.
You're just saying what the status quo is. We all know what the status quo is. That's useless.
What I'm saying is that if we go to Congress right now and give them the power over social media, right, it's only going to be a matter of time before the shitlibs control Congress, and now they're going to make it 10 times worse.
And now, how would that happen? Let's explain to me how that would happen. Remember, don't forget, censorship is a slippery slope. Anti-censorship is not a slippery slope. So explain to me how an anti-censorship law could be used beneficially by people who want to censor.
I don't.
What would that look like?
How an anti-censorship law?
Tell me how Congress. Tell me how a Democrat Congress could use SMACA to oppress the right.
How about they just annul it and write their own law?
So
you've given them the best that they can.
But they could already do that regardlless of whether SMACA exists or not.
Okay.
Why would that matter? So what you're saying is
SMACA is. I'm not talking about that. All I was talking about a very specific point that it's not.
How do you not know what it is?
I don't.
How?
What? How?
Yeah.
I don't know. Let me look in my files here.
Yeah, I mean, because you guys haven't get out there enough yet. Saying hardly anyone's heard of you. That's why you need broad-based support. It's not enough to have.
Nobody's heard of you either.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not telling him he's a nobody. I wasn't insinuating.
Well,
I mean, saying that's the exact point.
I've read various different bills.
All my local.
Perhaps one of the reasons you don't know about it is because, well, people like me that are trying to talk about it are censored, and so it's very hard to get the word out there when you can't spread your messages because they have you shadow banned and. So, et cetera. I'm
on my 7th Twitter account. I'm on my 3rd YouTube.
I'm on my 35th Twitter account. What's your point?
I'd give up at that point.
Well, you spoke to your local congressman?
I'm just saying I don't know about your bill. I don't know what it says. I've read plenty of anti-censorship laws. The best one should be one line long.
No, you haven't.
Versus Ohio.
You haven't. There aren't any anti-censorship law proposals except for SMACA. It's the only one. What you're talking about is a Supreme Court case. Brandenburg does set the standard for what is considered essentially incitement under the Constitution, and Brandenburg is very narrow. Most of what people like to call incitement doesn't even come close to meeting the Brandenburg standard, and thus is protected speech. Brandenburg is a very narrow decision, and that is the law today in the federal courts. So, but that's sort of beside the point. There is no other proposal besides SMACA.
I think you're making this mistake that whatever Doovid's position is, which I haven't particularly heard what his position is mine. I'm a free speech absolutist. I don't believe there should be any censorship of anything ever.
I told him the same thing. I'm even relatively liberal on incitement to violence.
So then why are you so hell-bent on saying that it's okay if Twitter does it?
I'm against government intervention into a lot of things, because I don't ever see government intervention in anything working out for the best.
Guess what? Here's an example where it actually works out.
Okay.
There's plenty of times when it works out. Government intervenes in all kinds of things. We have laws against murder. Is that not a sound example of government intervention? Would you rather not have those laws?
Easy answer, yes.
No, you've got a good point. I remember when murder got eradicated.
Okay, so it doesn't matter whether it got eradicated or not. There are fewer murders because there are laws against murder.
No,
at least one person in
the other way around.
At least one person in history has said, "No, I don't want to commit murder because I don't want to go to prison for the rest of my life." If that's the case, it's been beneficial.
If all you need to avoid committing murder is the pain of punishment, then we are doing a very shitty job at raising a society.
It doesn't cause some people. It doesn't cause. No, let me finish. Let me get in here. It doesn't cause some people. It's not enough of a. It's not enough of a. It's not enough of a deterrent for some people. They'll still commit their murder, but for some people, it is. You can never expect perfection because there just is no way to prevent everyone from committing murder, but a law does go some of the way to doing that because the law provides for punishment for people who do. Some people don't want to be punished, and so they don't commit the murder, even though they really want to. Okay, the law does have that deterrent effect. It's not optimal, okay, because it doesn't always stop people, but it frequently does.
My problem with most proposals that I've seen about anti-censorship laws.
There's actually no other proposal besides SMACA that you've seen because none exist. SMACA is the only one that exists, period. No, not if any other one existed, I would know about it.
Okay, well.
So what are you even talking about?
I can show you plenty of them that people have written. Paul Nehlen even wrote one.
That's mine. Okay, that's SMACA. SMACA was previously shall not censor. It basically looks exactly the same. Guess who made that? That was me. That's my brainchild.
Okay.
I came to Paul Nehlen with it and I said, would you like to run with this for your campaign? He said, yes. Then he went a little crazy. It's unfortunate at how that all unfolded. But, politics can be a stressful thing, apparently, for some people.
So can reading Culture of Critique for some reason. For some reason, it seems to be 45, like off the deep end.
When you're lied to for over 50, when you're lied to for over 50 years, it's,
an effect on people.
You find out you've been lied to for a very long time, and there are certain, groups that are, responsible for that, and you see what they're doing to the country. It can be a stressful thing. For a boomer, it can be enough to drive someone, perhaps drive someone insane. I'm sure he wouldn't be the first one that's where that's happened. That said, it's unfortunate. At least for the legislation, but
it's the same bill. Then I've read SMACA. I'm just saying I've read that proposal.
I made a couple,
but my whole
minor changes to it. But that's where it comes from.
Things solidify Twitter and Facebook and Google as being the de facto only social media platforms out there.
But that's the thing. We don't need more competition with it. Social media derives its value from the fact it's really. There's something called network effects. Network effects is this idea that a service derives its value from the fact that the number of other people that are using it. Okay, so the more people that are using it, the more value it has. With social media, in this particular context, the social media context, network effects are king. They are the only consideration that matters. That is the only thing that drives the value of a social media platform is the fact that everyone else is on it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want for example, when people say like, let's break up Twitter and Facebook, if you take a company
I wouldn't say
and you
like
break them up into 5 smaller companies, you're just fragmenting that. And people want you need at least a few platforms where everyone else is on them. You need those major platforms because otherwise social media doesn't have as much utility. Okay.
I agree, but when you look at how popular Gab, and don't get me wrong, I'm not even a fan of Gab. I think I've logged into my Gab account like 10 times.
It's starting to get halfway decent. I used to hate it, but it's starting to get because they're, it's starting to get halfway decent. But the reality is it's orders of magnitude smaller.
What I'm saying is that it could have been much bigger if it were not banned from the app.
No, it would never be bigger. The reason is you can see that, and that's why. Here's why, because network effects is so fundamental here in the social media context that in theory, let's say that I came out with the best platform ever, since it's the best thing you've ever seen. It had every feature you could ever want. It's the coolest thing imaginable. It had the best apps and it had everything was perfect about it. It would still not be able to compete with the major platforms because of network effects, because of the fact that it doesn't have enough people on it. So even when Twitter and Facebook have just sort of, they have a lot of features, but it's still very basic in the sense that, for example, on Twitter, you can't attach, it doesn't have an edit feature and you can't attach a photo and a GIF to the same tweet.
Facebook supplanted MySpace, and MySpace had supplanted whatever the other.
The only reason that Facebook ever supplanted MySpace was because at that time, when Facebook was competing with MySpace, that was before network effects had hit a critical mass such that it was possible to compete with that other platform.
Media promote Facebook?
It really doesn't. It doesn't matter. At that point in time, whichever one of those two platforms won that battle, at that point in time, network effects hit a critical mass and further competition would be impossible. So it was still at the point where, because these, social media hasn't existed for a very long time, at that point, the user bases and the potential user bases were still large enough that you could have that competition. But once people were sort of locked in, once those platforms became locked in, there's no way to unseat them. You can't unseat them at that point. The only thing that could possibly, unseat something like that would be like if it went bankrupt or something, which it won't. It's just not going to happen. I mean, there were other circumstances as well with MySpace that sort of led to its demise.
AOL, same thing. So,
but at this point, they're just sort of AOL. Its demise was basically because of the change in technology. The change to broadband is what killed AOL. But something like so long as social media is going to be around, and that's for the foreseeable future, because I don't really even know how much better social media could really get. I mean, to me, it kind of looks like social media has sort of hit its apex as far as what it can offer. I mean, you can share videos and photos and stuff. It doesn't, I don't think there's a lot more capability that's built into social media that's even possible. But, so it's really gone about, at this point, all you can really do is sort of make it faster, and that's basically it. But the reality is that as long as it's around, in the form it is right now, you're not going to be able to unseat those major platforms. And in fact, as we know, these some of these platforms like YouTube or Twitter, they don't even make profit. The left will simply fund this because they're willing to lose billions because they see that there's value that far exceeds that in controlling that flow of information.
I also think they're looking to the point where they do become a public utility and become more publicly funded.
They're never going to become a public utility. If you really think about it, I can't post them here, but I have a whole shitload of articles about, that you see about like Twitter saving lives, Facebook saving lives, especially in, emergencies where, hurricane, the aftermath of hurricanes where, people are rescued, the phone lines were jammed and they, sent a tweet and it caused them to be rescued. There's tons and tons of stories where that's happened. One could argue very easily that this is an essential, it is an essential channel of public communication. That's just another reason that we should not be, it would be wrong for these companies to be deciding who lives and dies. Well, censoring somebody off of one of these platforms could be the thing that kills them if they're, if their house is being flooded and they're on the roof and they go onto Twitter to send a message. Oh, your account has been suspended. Could that happen? Yes, it could absolutely happen.
It's something I talk about on my channel all the time, is that when you dox people out on social media and they get suspended from all social media, it's not only a life changer in that you can't function well, it's that when a potential employer says to you, what's your Facebook account? And you don't have one, you're either seen as being so archaic that you're not capable of keeping up with modern trends, or you have to admit that you were kicked off for something, and then they want to know what.
And this, of course, is one of the reasons why the left does this to the people on the right, is because they want the right excluded from large swaths of employment.
Oh, boy, could I blow your mind with some of the information I have on that stuff.
This is something that we can't allow. It's very simple.
I want to chime in for just a second. Earlier, you were saying something about how hey guys, how's it going? Earlier, you were saying something about how would the left gain control or something. This is a perfect time to chime in with the left will control things after a certain point. And I know that everyone's waiting for it, so I'm going to say it. Texas turns blue in 2024, bro.
Hey, real quick, there's a super chat from Esoteric.
But yeah, I mean, but
he says, hold on, real quick.
Sorry.
I was just gonna say, I'm gonna go right to you after this, Josh. Esoteric says the guests that collide with Halsey are pretty good. Doovid's been hitting that vape pen hard. All right, go ahead, Josh.
Yes, we do have to worry about stuff like Texas turning blue, and it will. And the Republicans are too stupid to do anything about it.
The chat is really curious about. Surprisingly, I'm the only one in the chat who thinks you're not Jewish, but like everyone in the chat thinks you're a Jew.
Who, me?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to answer, but the chat is very curious. I mean, they're not even curious to the chat. Like everyone basically like you're a Jew. But I was willing to think like nine.
You didn't see the HuffPo. Yeah, you didn't see the HuffPo docs piece, did you?
No, I don't know.
Yeah, well,
they got you too.
Oh yeah, I mean, I didn't really try to hide. I mean, once I was working for Paul Nehlen, I was.
So, what was the answer? Yes, no.
I was. My parents are Jewish.
So you think you're 100% Jew?
So he's more Jew than you, Doovid.
Okay, yeah. I mean, Brundle was just basically like very criticized by the alt-right for even talking to Jews, platforming Jews specifically.
And I could give a fuck what they say on certain programs. This is way better content than a lot of what they put out. But anyway,
a great defender of the Jewish people.
Yeah, I'm a great. Yes.
I mean, anyone that knows me knows my views on this stuff.
And it's not even really relevant. I mean, I think we should just get back to
Yeah, actually, I don't really care about that, but I do care about the concept of the left owning social media and like the levers to power. Because I actually do think that's a big issue. Mm-hmm. And with regards to the entire whether or not Twitter is going to be a public utility or rationed out by the government in terms of their policies or whatever, that is a thing that is technically a possibility. And
Twitter will I say that one more time?
The concept that Twitter would have to start abiding by dictates from the federal government as to what they can and cannot censor.
Yeah, I mean, that's a possibility if Congress passes a law. If it doesn't, then it's not a possibility. It's not something that the judiciary can do. It's not something that Trump can do unilaterally. It's not something that any executive agency like the FCC can do.
As I said, my biggest fear is that social media becomes academia, where it becomes so dominated by the left that it becomes more of an indoctrination center than it does a utility.
That's what the left wants. As it turns out, see, the thing is, one thing that people say is they're like, oh, we need to crush these platforms. We need to shut down Facebook and Twitter. No, these platforms benefit the right far more than they benefit the left. In fact, if the left was genuinely interested in just crushing the right, they would shut down these platforms overnight and send us back to the days when the mainstream media were the gatekeepers for all information. The reason why they need to shut the right off of these platforms is because the right benefits the most from them. Mm-hmm. It allows the right a way to bypass.
How would this apply to like Anwar al-Awlaki and ISIS? I mean, do they also have a right to free speech here in America and to be part of social media and to even attempt to recruit people to ISIS?
I mean, where are they located?
Well, I mean, if we let them, presumably they would be located here in America if we allowed them on social media and YouTube.
Well, they're already allowed on social media. They're not banned from social media. The government can, the government needs to allow them on social media so they can see them recruiting, so that they can track them down and prosecute them.
Absolutely. Otherwise, they just go on the dark web and they're like untraceable.
Right. I mean, it's not like somebody says this person's a member of ISIS and Twitter bans them. That's not how this works.
Right here in America, we have the First Amendment usually is meant to include talk about bringing down our own government. That's included in free speech.
Right.
The essence of free speech.
That's correct. I mean, people always try to just, come up with examples as to why we should sort of carve out exceptions for the First Amendment. They say, well, what about ISIS? The government will have to figure out a way to deal with the speech that they consider a problem without censoring. I mean, like I said, if you have people that are recruiting for ISIS, recruiting for a terrorist organization is a crime.
Mm-hmm.
So you can prosecute them. Do that.
Mm-hmm.
Prosecute them for the crimes of the organization. You can generally, you can use various federal statutes to prosecute members of ISIS for crimes that other members of ISIS have committed. There's a substantial chance that there are conspiracies involved and things like that you can make arrests and prosecute them for. Many of them aren't even in this country, so it's really not a relevant question with regard to something like SMACA. Because
do your parents agree with you? I mean, we know statistically that majority of Jews in America disagree with you. Most people think.
Can we please not go there?
I don't talk to my parents about politics, and I don't care what their political views are. They're
a majority of Jews in America are brainwashed morons.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into a conversation about like, do you feel guilty that other Jewish people might want you to feel guilty? Like, I don't.
No.
I'm just looking at this evolution. And I'm just presuming that you changed path from your parents and was looking at your evolution of why you would change from the in-group norm.
Well, hold on. Are you saying, David, that he has to like toe the company line when it comes to Jewish politics?
No, he could do what he wants. He doesn't have to share his story if he wants. I was just curious because presumably, if he's your average American Jew, that's not how he always thought, and there's probably an evolution of his change in thought on the issue.
The white race is the greatest race in the history of humankind.
Jews are the Jewish race.
Jews are leading the. Let me finish. Jews are leading the effort to genocide the white race.
Red pills.
Yeah,
red pills.
That's a problem, and
why is that not protected free speech? But I mean, why is that not protected? Me getting on here promoting if I'm not open immigration, but even if I was promoting open immigration, multiculturalism, and all this stuff, aren't you protecting me? Am I right to do that?
Yes, although I don't want you here, so I would make every effort to send you back to your homeland, which is Israel.
So wait a minute. Would you be sending yourself back there too?
I'd rather I go back last because I'd rather actually kill myself than have to live in Israel with.
Yeah, but me and Halsey are only half Jews. I'm saying you're going back to Israel if you're 100% Jew.
Yeah,
me and Halsey are half Jews.
By that point, by the point that happens, I'll be either really, really old, in which case I can just put a bullet in my own brain, or
I'm saying relatively just.
No, that's all that I have to worry about. Practically speaking, if you're making this, if you're
100% Jew, you're going back to Israel.
Yeah. I think that I'll be okay, considering that,
You worked for Nayland.
No, I'm defending your right to be an American. It's like, I don't care. You can be subversive here in America.
I don't need you to defend that.
You have the right to be a subversive Jew here in America.
No, I don't need.
Why is he a subversive Jew?
I don't need you to defend my right to undermine this country. I don't want to undermine
his nature. I mean, just because he's part of our tribe, even though he's on the side.
But I don't consider myself part of your tribe. I can't. Your tribe is evil. They're trying to do evil things.
Yeah, but that's you. I'm saying that's that you look in the mirror. That's you.
No, it's not.
Yeah, I'm saying it's
look in the mirror. Look in the mirror.
Are you like one of these new trans white people?
Yeah, I mean, you're not white. You're a Jew.
I
I'm
don't.
sorry.
I mean, you're not white.
I don't consider myself white, but I am. But I am an advocate. But I am an advocate for the white race, and
I love you,
support
Josh.
the white
I
race.
have you on every night.
And I want the white race to have its.
God.
I want the white race to succeed and to have its own, have their own homelands, which is something that's being denied to them, which is not denied to any other race.
Yeah, but what's your role
Press
in that
14
as a
in the
Jew?
chat to hail Josh Smith.
Yeah, but he's a Jew. What's his role in that? I mean, where's Norvin?
I don't know.
When we need, I'm saying I don't.
I don't
mind.
know. I just press
what's my
14,
role in that?
please.
No,
I'll do whatever. I'll do whatever. What's my role in that? I'll do whatever I need to do
Just to help the whites.
to help. Yes, to help secure the existence of the white race in the future for its children.
Well, why? You're not one of them.
It doesn't matter.
I mean, it's like, why not the blacks or the Mexicans or the Chinese? Why'd you choose the whites?
You know what I'm finding
Whites,
funny?
because whites are worthy of it.
I
And
mean,
the
at least
others that you
Halsey's
mentioned
half white.
aren't.
I mean, Halsey's got blue eyes and he's half white, but even like, you know, what that means you like Halsey, you know, like Halsey's your guy. He's your
Which
pick.
race created the society that we love so much and that we
Jews.
live in? No,
Dude,
Jews did not create the fucking United States of America. Are you insane?
I'd rather live in a big souk in Baghdad. But I understand your point. You know, you have a valid point. And I think this is interesting. Keep going. Keep going.
Shook. Souk.
Yeah, shook.
Man.
I mean, whites create great civilizations.
Well, only because they had the Jews as part of them.
No,
saying
that's
the
not-
greatness of Europe was that the majority of Jews resided among them.
I think you're triggering the fuck out of Babs, man.
I mean, as you see, as the Jews have left Europe, the Europeans have declined, and on the global scene, no, I mean, saying India and China and Korea are basically already surpassed the white peoples.
Doovid, no.
Obviously, you're biased.
I'm buying that, to be honest with you.
Well, I mean, you just look at it objectively. Our opinions on the matter don't matter. I'm saying you could be like, "Oh, I'm white. I love my people," and I look at all people the same. I don't care whether you're white or black. But I'm saying,
But that's idiotic.
But you're a Jew. I'm saying, like you're
Why do you keep saying that?
Because you're like the black KKK member. I'm saying you're not.
No, I'm not like the black KKK member because I'm not black.
Well, you're a Jew. That's basically the same thing.
No, it's not.
It's not.
I think. I mean,
It's not.
Yeah,
It's not at all.
yeah, Brundle. That's why that was the argument on Heel Turn last night. So you disagree.
Jews are hated by white people because they subvert white societies.
Well, I'm not so sure. I mean, relatively, white people are the biggest lovers of the Jew, according to the survey. But I'm saying, okay,
No, they're not. Actually, the biggest quote unquote lovers of the Jew are India. I believe India is the most Jew friendly country in the world, and I think Kurds are possibly, arguably, even more Jew friendly than Westerners overall.
You know how hard we had to go through just to get one white Brundle to like us. To think like 6 months of effort just to get one white to speak on our behalf, and Brundle's only like half in our defense.
And it's all this work's been undone. Just kidding.
Sorry, Halsey, go ahead. Halsey, go ahead.
South Korea is actually the most Jew-friendly country.
Oh, South Korea surpassed India. Well, congratulations, South Korea.
They actually teach Talmud to grade school kids because they're trying to unlock the secret Jew magic in South Korea.
You know,
fascinating.
It really, I mean, there are some just very basic red pill things that once you realize that it's so inexcusable that you can't look at Jews as anything other than having evil intentions. When they have their own ethno state, and they do, Israel is their ethno state that whites gave to them.
You were saying we, not they, we.
Wow, the amount of bullshit that you just laid out in one sentence was pretty.
Yeah, I'm saying like what you can't talk about Jews in the third person. You have to talk about Jews in the first person.
Well, I'll talk about Jews however I want, because it would be wrong for me to include myself in that group because I'm not trying to subvert white societies, and I'm not trying to genocide the white race. So
not all Jews.
That's the defining characteristic of you to being a Jew, but somehow you're the lone exception.
Well, I'm one of the few exceptions, yes, apparently, and that's part of the problem. The thing is, you know, they have their own ethno state. Whites gave that.
Not they. We.
No, they. because I'm not going to Israel. Like I said, that's not going to because that's not going to happen. No, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. Stop talking.
You can change your mind in a second. And
Josh doesn't have to go anywhere.
I would rather be executed than go live in Israel with a bunch
change
of
your mind
Jews.
next week.
Nope, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, but saying change your mind.
And why?
Oh my God, both of you are so embarrassing. Sorry, go ahead.
And why would it not happen? Because fundamentally, I'm really not a Jew. That's why. Because I'm not going to change my mind to save my own ass. All right, that's why. Because I'm not going to act like you are saying people are just supposed to act. I guess people like you, I mean, other Jews. Now, the thing is, they have their own ethno-state, and yet, they want to deny that to whites. If whites say that they should have their own ancestral homelands for their own race, they are demonized, and Jews lead this effort to demonize them. This in itself, that level of hypocrisy is so off the charts, fucking insane, that alone just makes you want to expel them from the country. How could you not want to when they have the gall?
Because we're the awesomest people. Like, we have super high IQs, we're innovative, we're entertaining, we're great mortgage brokers and stockbrokers and so on.
Then go be great in Israel.
Wait a minute. I have a legit question. I'm not making a joke. I have a legit question. If you are so adamant that Jews need to be expelled, why are you not leading by example? Why are you not
self-deport?
Out?
Self-deport.
Because I'm the least subversive one of the bunch.
How do you know that?
I do. How do I know that? Because it's pretty obvious that I'm doing more than many white people are doing.
How is that obvious that you're doing more than anyone on?
Why would I? By leading by example? No, I don't want. I'm not going to just indiscriminately send Jews back just willy nilly. No, they're going to go back in the order that they were, in the order in which they were subversive. Okay, in other words, the most subversive ones are going back first. And by the time you get to me, I'm going to be 85 years old, 90 years old, or I'm going to be dead already. Okay, so it won't matter.
But right? so on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being doovid, you being 10, you think that by the time we get to 10, it won't matter. Because I couldn't get the fucking shit out of my mouth. You think that you're a good white person, or at least trans white person, that by the time they get to you, because everyone else has flunked the subversive test, and you've passed with flying colors for so long, that at that point it won't matter anymore.
Pretty much. I have certain skills I can offer that specialized skills that make me valuable, even if I am, as Doovid keeps on pointing out,
more Jewish than anyone on the stream.
I have some percentage of Ashkenazi Jew in my DNA. I don't know what percentage that is. I've never taken a DNA test, but I couldn't tell you. I know that my family has European heritage, but I don't know how much. I also know that there's Ashkenazi Jewish heritage. I have no idea how much, though.
Yeah.
I'm not giving my DNA to one of those fucking companies because I know what they're trying to do with that shit now.
Yeah,
Josh. Percentage. I don't know if Doovid knows his. So.
Josh, I think you've been making some really good critiques of the behaviors of a diasporic Jewry, but your servile groveling in an attempt to ingratiate yourself to Westerners is embarrassing me as a proud Middle Eastern Hebrew.
I reject that framing, Babs.
It's not groveling. I love white people. I love everything about them. I love white civilization. I would do anything for white people. It has nothing to do with saving myself or groveling to them. They deserve the praise that I am giving to them. They deserve it. They built a civilization that I grew up in and that I love. I would do anything for them.
Okay, that's fair. I think that's reasonable gratitude. And I think that, as someone living in diaspora, that's the kind of gratitude, quite frankly, that should be shown to a population that's basically hosting you, as it were. Yeah. I think that that's actually quite sensible. So I'll agree with you there.
Yeah, and let me go ahead and just say, Doovid, you could take a tip from that one, by the way.
Okay, yeah, I mean, you enjoyed Josh. You guys could have him.
I can't believe I'm having this conversation.
I officially allow you to become
believe
white,
into his
Josh.
race?
Although I think you're going to find a lot of people aren't going to be.
I don't know that that's true. Josh, have you been on Heel Turn by any chance?
I haven't.
You haven't? I think you should. The guy that helped set this up books for that show too. I think they would love to have you.
I'll talk to him about it.
The guy. Yeah, Joaquin would love to have you.
I'll talk to him about it for sure.
Yeah, we'll see. But I mean, I don't care. I mean, but
look, you can't get you can't please all the people all the time. You can't get everyone to like you.
Well, I know how sausage is made. I'm saying, I'm a Jew. I'm a political hack.
Some people are just not. Look, some people are just not going to like Jews. Period. And there's nothing that you could do, no matter how nice you are. They're just not going to like you. Oh well, you know, you can't please everybody.
I mean, who cares?
Yeah,
let them hate. Let the haters hate.
But what I want to,
join the, you know, that's why.
But what I want to be clear is that
long lines. There's long lines of people who hate me. You can join the line.
I don't hate you. The thing is,
you don't want me to
that doesn't mean that I hate you. It doesn't mean if you don't want someone to share a country with you, it doesn't mean you hate them. It just means that you don't want to share a country with them. You know, it would be, if you think about it, wouldn't it be interesting if if blacks had their own nation, right? You know, of course, we have this problem where because blacks were brought over from Africa, you can't really send them back to Africa at this point because they're just so different from the African blacks that, African Americans, if you will, wouldn't be able to. They would not. They're too different at this point. So you have to give them their own country. So you carve out a part of the United States and you give it to the blacks. Wouldn't it be interesting to have, sporting events where black basketball teams come up here to the white part of the United States, and they have their basketball games, and they compete against each other. You have nations competing against each other of various races, and you can have all that. You can have trading with different countries, but you don't have to live with them. It's not about whether you like them or hate them. It's about the fact that humans do not live
you don't
well
have to live with them in
other
your
races.
House or your apartment. You have to live with them in your country.
You have to live with them in close proximity. That's the problem.
In the public square. You don't have to take them into your house.
Some states that are like 93% white. I think Maine is like the whitest state in the country. Like, you do not have to live with blacks if you don't want to.
You will be forced to, and you can't escape it.
How did Maine escape it?
Maine isn't escaping it. Maine is being flooded with Somalis.
That's actually a huge issue. This is a major issue that Josh is bringing up, and this is one of the reasons why I think
Texas is going to go blue.
Texas will go blue. No, Texas is going to fucking go blue.
Think about this. When you hear all these, think about you hear a story about some sort of you'll hear a story about refugees in Idaho or something like that.
Yeah.
And you'll be like, why are there? You'd be like, out of all the places you would settle, people that are not white, why would you settle them in a place like Idaho? We have a big country. Why would you settle them in Alaska or Maine? Why wouldn't you settle them in, I don't know, an urban area? Maybe, maybe amongst people that are like them. No, they're being settled in areas that are overwhelmingly white, specifically because they want to make those areas non-white. They want to, yeah. And if whites object to that,
Josh, just
they'll be demonized for it.
This is who you are. This is who you are. Repent, grow a beard, and pay us. Look in the mirror and realize this.
See, Doovid, you're not like good optics. Like, if there was someone who was going to win him over towards like Hebrew identity, it certainly wouldn't be you. But yeah,
I don't think it's an optics problem, actually.
And also,
I personally never took well to.
Let's go ahead and I can't help but be amused by this. Josh right now is talking about the ethnic cleansing, the soft genocide of whites. Doovid is upset by this and is advocating that Josh repent of his genocide, or rather of his non-genocidal ways, to join Doovid. That's really funny. Think about that for just a minute.
Yeah, it's true. Like, Doovid, why is he not allowed to care about the destruction of white homelands and white societies?
He's allowed to care about it, just like I care about his Jewish soul. I mean, he cares about that. I care about his Jewish soul. Like, to me, I'm just looking at you and it's like, you would look a lot better with these things. I mean, because that's that, saying like you have to get in touch with your ethnic heritage. You're saying like you've been robbed of your knowledge of Judaism. You've fallen to believing in all these like lies and misconceptions about Jews, and you like don't know too much
They're
about
not lies
your
and
own heritage.
misconceptions. That's the
And
problem.
when you start looking into your own heritage,
they're not lies and
you're
misconceptions. Jews openly admit to doing what we're saying that they're doing. They don't hide it anymore, at least. They openly admit to it, and they're proud of it. They have no remorse about it. They have no regrets. They
openly admit to being multicultural and favoring immigration and refugees,
and favoring white countries, in white countries, in white countries, in only white countries, and in every single white country on earth. Okay, what the fuck do we need diversity in Iceland for? Can you explain that? Can you explain that to me by reference to anything other than wanting to destroy the white race? That you have to fucking send browns and blacks to Iceland?
Wait a minute.
We send Chabad. We have Chabad in Iceland. There's only like 30 Jews in Iceland. I don't know what you're talking about.
That's 30 more than there ought to be. But in addition,
Iceland would probably be better off with thousands of Jews.
In addition to that, they're sending browns and blacks there to fucking Iceland.
Great. I love those people.
What is the motivation for that? Tell me, please, what benevolent motivation?
Love and inclusion.
We need to be on the side of refugees because we were once refugees.
Repent, return to your heritage, Josh.
Dude, the funny thing is, even historically speaking, like the only thing that makes Jews sort of be inherently like sort of pro-refugee and take the side of the minority is because we became a diasporic minority people against our own will due to foreign colonialism. Precisely like many of us are unfortunately trying to enact upon Westerners and many other parts of the world. I am actually inclined to definitely agree with Josh on this. I think that doooovid, these actions, although they may have innocent motives, I think that they may be causing more harm than good in a lot of instances.
But I
think that they may be purely driven by
just like, oh, right, you're giving the critique like, oh, like just because we want more immigration, multiculturalism, that we want to genocide you, and just like the Jews, the ADLs complaining about you guys. That's why I'm
in white countries, in only white countries, and every single white country. No white country is left unmolested by this fetish for diversity. Now, with all of the other countries, I mean, think about how many black countries are there in Africa? All black countries. And yet Jews are pushing for diversity in 0 of them. That's weird. How about East Asian countries? I mean, aside from the fact that if you tried that in an East Asian country, they would say fuck off because they're not pathologically altruistic like whites are, but they're not doing it there either. So just white countries.
I'm just curious. I'm curious as to, you seem to think that Jews are responsible for this.
They are.
I don't really hear your criticism of the Catholic Church, who is the biggest religion on the planet and run by a singular pontiff who openly advocates for open borders for whites. I don't hear your criticism. I'm just saying.
I can criticize that all day. That's
population, but you seem to be excluding the very large percent of the population because it doesn't fit in with your autistic screeching. I'm just saying.
This is the Achilles heel of whites. They are pathologically altruistic, and the Catholic Church.
I thought you just said they're the greatest thing on the planet. That you love them so much that you want to cuddle up with them and take them into your bosom. How are they? But how they're so altruistic that they're bringing about their own death? I'm curious as to where
that is their weakness. They are so altruistic. They are such good people that they are willing to suicide themselves over it. That's a problem, but that is their Achilles heel. They don't have many, but that is one. It's a problem, and the Catholic Church, of course, is exploiting this. This is something that has to be stopped.
Can we just kind of basically address what I perceive to be like not the elephant in the room, but sort of a big underlying factor that takes place that is kind of the root of a lot of this stuff, which is the fact that a lot of Jews, I mean, more specifically, mostly Ashkenazi Jews, but Jews in general, Jews who have, or rather Jews who have lived in the lands of Westerners, have had experiences that they perceive to be like humiliating or terrible or horrifying or like murderous under under the Westerners, and therefore there's, I think, a lot of trying to get, I guess, a bit of revenge. There's a lot of sort of like combined with we can't let this happen again. I really feel like there is a lot of that sentiment, and I think that that is still, like, for instance, I mean, this isn't the most recent Pew poll, but there was that Pew poll that talked about how one of the main things that American quote unquote Jews identify as being integral, like core to their Jewish identity, is quote unquote remembering the Holocaust. And how does this manifest itself? Is basically Europeans should not be able to have sovereignty because that somehow down the line leads to the Holocaust. It's basically manifests itself as anti-European / as an anti-Western sentiment, at least in regards to things like sovereignty generally and like culture. You know what I'm talking about, right? I mean, I don't know. Do you guys think that there's an element of resentment or revenge going on here? Whether correctly placed or misplaced is a separate issue, but I think that certainly is at play.
Of course, I think that's absolutely.
I only want to say one thing very briefly. I do know a guy who is in his late 70s or early 80s, and to this day he hates Germans, Jewish guy. So I think there's absolutely a deep-seated resentment going on. I've seen it. I've experienced it.
To Germans, but you're saying you're not German, you're Scottish. Yeah, I'm saying most synagogues openly curse the German people, or at least the Nazis, but saying that doesn't apply to all white people.
Right, but your undermining of my entire civilization is going to affect me as well as Germans.
Yeah, but saying the bad blood between Jews is most specifically to Germans or the Spanish. Like, okay, the English expelled us in like 1200, but there's never been
don't forget about the other 108 times they were expelled.
I mean, you're talking largely something between the Jews and the Germans.
Oh my God!
Not between the Jews and all white people, or the Jews and even larger Europe.
Yeah, Doovid, the problem here is that the policies that the genocidal policies that you are advocating are going to affect me as well as Germans. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Well, that could be, but your point about the elder Jew who hates the German.
Maybe is it possible? Remember how you were saying before?
Whatever to that. No.
Remember how you were saying before that. Well, remember how you were saying before that, Doovid, that that we're just angry because the ADL won or something like that. You had something to that effect. You were saying that's why this resentment comes from the fact that the ADL is beating us. Well, maybe this resentment that the Jews have towards whites and Germans, as you're saying, comes from the fact that actually what Jews were doing in Weimar Germany led to the rise of Adolf Hitler and led to what happened in World War II. And he actually almost beat the Jews. And they're angry about that.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, the Germans had dealt the biggest blow in the history of the world to the Jews. Maybe percentage-wise, the Romans did more damage. The Romans actually inflicted way more damage to the Jews.
So maybe it's just not a great idea for Jews to be living amongst people that they don't get along with.
So go. No,
we're not living. We're Germans. I mean, Germans are probably one of the largest, a plurality here in America.
Where's he supposed to go? He's right at home with me.
Yeah, I'm saying the Tree of Life Synagogue massacre was the biggest negative event against Jews in the history of America, and God forbid 10 people being killed. And you're saying, you could look in European history, and there's countless.
Do you know how trivial?
So I was saying, no, I'm saying,
do you know how comparatively trivial?
We're very popular here in America. Even you're pretty popular here in America. You're saying even the neo-Nazi group is willing to let you be a member. Saying this is in America.
You're taking actions that are leading to the soft genocide of the white race, and yet you're still very popular, and yet you're still so popular. That's because whites are suicidally altruistic.
Yeah, that's unclear.
Among other things.
I mean, your speculations about these things.
Well, I don't think it's a rational thing.
You people are all. Basically, David Duke students. I mean, so you're just drawing, because this guy's pro-immigration and pro-multiculturalism. He's my
What do you
enemy.
mean,
And
student?
it's like,
David Duke
it's like
student?
No,
Eki,
David, it's because you're
who was
undermining.
questioning the
No,
motives
David.
of me being pro-integration and multicultural to
No,
me
David,
being his
it's-
enemy. And that's fine. Like, I mean, he could look at it that way, and we could keep on having. I mean, we've had thousands of hours of these. I mean, hundreds of hours of these arguments already.
Zero successful multicultural civilizations throughout history. Zero. Not one has been successful. And yet this is supposed to be the first. It's going to work this time. Are you kidding?
Yeah, I mean, you're wrong.
Next year somehow going
All empires have been. All empires were multicultural, from Babylon to Persia to
They all
Rome to
collapsed.
Greece.
David. Every one of them collapsed.
Can you name one nation that hasn't collapsed? Actually, in the history of the world, can you name one nation, period, that hasn't collapsed?
Every single one of every country always collapses. I'm not going to deny
Not
that.
just the multicultural ones. Every
the
single
point
one of
is
them, no
that
matter what they try.
the point is that if you look at the globe, if you look at the entire planet, you will notice that you see people that group into geographical areas. Why? Because they kill off the ones that aren't like them over time. That's just what happens.
It's
Doovid, no. Doovid.
It's just the way of the world.
No, it's true. It's true.
People kill each other off. That's just the way things work. I'm sorry, Doovid. That's your message, but
No,
I disagree.
No, it doesn't have to be that way. If people,
David,
No, but he says it does have to be that way. You agree.
if people lived amongst their own, there would be less of a.
I'm saying America should be allowing Hasidim to set up our own towns and live. They don't need to get rid of the Jews. They should be bringing more of us here. They should be letting us make our own settlement. And I'm saying you're allowed to disagree.
Have your own nation. You're
And we
denying that to whites.
I don't care that we have our own nation. We have our own.
We
settlement.
also have the right to live anywhere in the world. Jews should not only have the right to live in our own indigenous land, but should have the right to live anywhere in the world and be treated like first-class citizens, indigenous people of that nation. Is that basically what's being advanced here? I mean, that's
No, but I'm saying we have a right to live.
that
we
would
have-
be nice,
we
but
have
I
the-
don't think
just because we have Israel
reasonable
doesn't mean
to expect.
we don't
nor
have the
do I think
right.
it's fair.
and
I'm saying-
I can't help but notice this tickles me every time.
It's just like Etchy, you have Scotland. You got to get out of here in America. Go back.
I love that Doovid goes on and on and on about how he wants to undermine America and Europe, and yet the parasite that he is, he will not leave. He loves being around us, and he loves undermining us at the same time. Fucking parasite.
I like Detroit. I'm not around you people. I say like I got a big buffer zone to you people. I'm in Detroit.
Who are you surrounded by? Just fellow Jews,
Well, my immediate neighborhood,
or your puppets, the blacks?
they're not my puppets. I mean, they're part of my coalition.
My coalition.
Yeah, you're totally equals with them, right?
I'm
With
saying
that,
my fellow American,
you're totally equals with all the blacks.
my fellow Americans are largely my African American neighbors, and I don't, I have some
Hold
Jewish
on,
neighbors and some.
one sec, David. Babs, can you tell your mother's a coalition builder, right? What's the relationship between the blacks and the Jews in the coalition?
Yeah, they're co-equals.
Babs, are you muted? I think we're losing Babs.
Hold on.
Yeah. What is the relationship between? We can hear you now.
Tenuous.
Yeah, you're fondling your microphone again.
Damn.
I mean, I don't mind your opinion, but then I love America. I'm happy here in America, and you guys are losing the battle. Look what's happening in New York. The Hasidim are expanding, and America is letting us set up our. Yeah, it is. I'm saying we're being allowed to set up our special Yiddish communities.
Isn't that what a
Metastasizing.
what a privilege? Now, why is it that you completely disallow whites to do the same in their own homeland?
I allow whites. I'm not standing in their way. That's
Yes, you are, because you and your ilk will sue and flood those communities with non-whites if they try.
Like,
no, you and your ilk.
honestly,
You and your ilk.
coalition.
You and your ilk, because I'll be defending the whites.
Yeah, Vermont's too white. Like, we got to do something about that.
Right. So please don't say for 1 second that, oh, nobody's stopping them. That's a load of shit.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much big pressure. I mean, you might have some organization like the ADL who will attempt to raise, but no, I mean, you don't. They're not. There's hundreds of lawsuits across the country. There is political pressure. There might be groups that are going to speak to your local congressmen or political leaders, but relatively, the Jews have extremely little power.
No, that's utter. Those are all lies. Every one of those is a lie. That's all lies. There is a big issue with right here,
until they comply.
Yeah, just north of where I live, George Lucas stopped a big Section 8 housing thing that was going to happen. I think it was like Mendocino County or some shit. I forget.
Yeah, but you live in the heartland of Jewish power. Most of America is not. And I'm saying you live in one of the three most powerful Jewish places in America.
Right.
If you were in Maine, Jewish power is very limited.
Okay, so north of here, George Lucas.
Isn't very limited anywhere.
Oh, George so now Josh is the secret conspiratorial Jew saying, no, you're wrong. I know we're very powerful in Maine.
When they literally exercise that power everywhere. If Idaho right now tried to set up an all-white community, they would be opposed by the ADL of New York and everyone else throughout
they have very little power. I'm just getting Sholem Ravashkin. We had to get President Trump elected into office in order that he could issue a pardon. You got to Sholem Ashkin. We had zero power in Iowa.
No mitigating circumstances. Okay, he did what he was convicted of. He was sentenced accordingly. Okay, you managed to get him.
We had to get President Trump put into office in order to issue a official presidential pardon because we had no power in Iowa.
Oh, right.
And you're saying, the same power that tried to get Sholem Ravashkin out of prison is the same power that might try to prevent your little white settlement, but it's not that much power in Iowa or Maine. And where Eke lives, definitely.
But it will act, the power that it does have will act on Iowa.
They might put out like a small lawsuit. I'm saying if someone tried.
Are you insane?
Yeah, I'm saying I know how these organizations work. So it's saying they put out a lawsuit if you try in a place that has no Jewish power.
Try 10 lawsuits.
Well, either way, they can just slow you down. Yeah, I'm sure you know because
try 6 million lawsuits.
Because you're a Jew. Obviously, you know how this works.
Yeah, they'll just slow it down, of course, because there are so many of those white settlements. They just are slowing down. They didn't manage to stop it completely. They just slowed it down, right? No, there are literally none because they're not allowed.
Didn't David Cole have a compound? There's a lot of white compounds. I live in Michigan. There's a lot of militias. There's a lot of neo-Nazis with compounds.
Branch Davidians are, the kind of, white community.
Factually, you're just wrong because fact is in Michigan, there's tens of neo-Nazi compounds, and the ADL has absolutely zero power to shut them.
Let's try to think in terms of things other than compounds. How about that?
Yeah, the problem here is that, dude, you're talking about fucking compounds, but the issue is Section 8 housing.
Well, if the ADL is so powerful, how come they can't get those places
shut down? They are putting in entire townships of immigrants, and you are ignoring that, dude. You're fucking ignoring it. You're a liar.
But if the ADL is so powerful, how come they can't get those places shut down?
ADL here is a shorthand for ADL plus highest plus all of the other.
Yeah, I'm saying the Jewish
organizations that will exert that power.
Israel and all the Jewish people in America just don't have that much power. They can't even get these places shut down.
You can get President Trump to pardon people.
Yeah, we were able to do that. I'm saying that's why we put him into office.
Dude, if all the Jews in America really mobilized towards something and making it happen, we can make people disappear. We can completely unperson them. We can ruin their lives.
No, not really. I mean, you could see.
Yeah, I mean, it's happened before.
There's a lot of people that the whole, like David Duke, I'm saying, like the whole universal Jewish community in Israel is against people.
David Duke hasn't been marginalized at all. Jews have not had any influence on what the general culture and what the public thinks about David Duke.
Exactly. Because these organizations just are not that powerful.
You have demonized him.
Yeah, so that's the same thing.
David Duke, some sort of boogeyman.
Duvid's roommate wants me to make the point that Hasids are surrounded by Section 8 housing.
Your microphone again. It's a Yeti. You're not supposed. You could set it 10 feet away from you.
That's better. Hasids are surrounded by Section 8 housing, says Duvid's roommate.
What? Hasids are surrounded by Section 8.
Duvid's roommate wants to make the point that Hasids are surrounded by Section 8 housing.
Yeah, I mean, in New York, we have a lot of power, so obviously, but like across America, I mean, I follow it. Yeah, there's a lot of places that the Jews have people that, we have historical problem with, and we've leveraged our power and we've failed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's not factual.
Here's I want to show you something. Here
It was just like the Iran deal. Like President Obama.
I can post it in the chat.
I just have to pull it up here. Let me see. Where is it? Go ahead. Continue for a
You
second.
got Chabad out there by you, Josh? Did you speak to your local Chabad?
I don't know what you just said.
The Jewish missionaries.
What? Is that even a thing? I genuinely.
This guy hasn't even heard of Chabad?
I genuinely don't know much about the religion. I never took well to Judaism. I never really liked it. I had a bar mitzvah. My parents made me, and then they said after that I could decide what I wanted to do, and I decided very quickly that I would.
You broke your oath. You made an oath to God, and you broke it.
Yeah, it was just because my parents made me. It wasn't because I was, I took it seriously.
Okay, well, I pray that you reconsider your Judaism.
Okay, whatever. Okay.
In the meantime, enjoy. Vux. He seems to like you. He might allow you in.
AK Lux, would you, as the arbiter? I mean, we don't have Norvin is actually technically.
Here, okay. Here's an article this is from Mail Online back in, let's see, March of 2018. Sweden. Okay, so Sweden vows to ban all religious schools in an effort to tackle segregation after taking in a record number of asylum seekers. Now, this, of course, Sweden 2018. This is, seems pretty typical for Sweden. Here's something interesting.
They disallowed the Chabad missionary.
Jewish schools will be exempt from the new ban. Politicians.
Putin personally intervened. I mean, I was following that.
I don't care if Putin personally.
The chief rabbi of Moscow personally intervened and asked Putin.
Think about this for a second. No religious schools in Sweden, but Jewish schools will be exempt from the new ban. Do you think?
Thanks to Putin.
I don't care why. Do you think that
I'm filling you in? I know what happened. I was following that.
And why do you and regardless of why Putin said that, do you think that that's a problem that might cause people in Sweden to resent Jews? That it's it's religious schools for me, but not for thee. Do you think that attitude goes
making special exceptions
go over well with any majority in their country?
To make an exception for the Jews?
Make an exception only for yourself.
Yeah, I don't think most people in Sweden care whether Jews have an exception to not go to their schools.
No. That's not what I'm saying. Do you think that they would be upset that people might feel resentful that nobody can have their own religious schools, but Jews can?
Because we're chosen, we can live like first-class citizens anywhere in the world.
Who's gonna be upset? I mean, whatever reason. I mean, just like the ADL, so to say, one.
Listen, Doovid, I got to jump off in a second, so I want you to listen loud and clear, Doovid. He is absolutely right that Jews are super evil because of a newspaper article from Sweden. You remember that the next time you go daven, how evil you are, Doovid.
The iceberg guy.
Were you following that case, Halsey? I mean, we got Putin to personally intervene on our behalf.
I could give you 70,000 examples.
Matter.
Same pattern of behavior.
Are literally the worst lark.
Halsey, that's really no, Halsey, that's disingenuous. Halsey, that is super disingenuous. That is disingenuous, and you know it. We're talking about the indigenous people of Sweden. The indigenous people of Sweden don't get to have their own religious schools in their own country, and yet a foreign population, a population that is not indigenous to Sweden, gets to have their religious schools? No, fuck that. Absolutely not. No, fuck that.
I don't care about Sweden at all.
I know you don't care about Sweden.
I'm
aware you don't care about Sweden. Just as I'm aware that Doovid also does not care about Sweden, nor does Doovid care about America. He said,
I care about Sweden.
I believe you, Halsey. I completely believe you when you say that you do not care about Sweden. I totally believe you.
How many times have you heard me say, I don't believe a single Jew should be allowed to live in Europe? I've said it 1,000 times. I don't believe they're compatible. I don't believe a single Jew should be allowed to live in Europe.
Fantastic.
So I don't understand how you're sitting here saying I'm disingenuous. I just don't give a shit. I don't care. I think that if they want to throw all the Jews back to Israel, they can. Europeans and Jews do not mix in European countries. They're like oil and water. I don't know whose fault it is. I don't really care. I've often said I don't believe that Jews should live in Europe. The animosity runs too deep. It's like an American plug in a British lamp. It won't turn on the light. So I'm not sitting here arguing as to fault. Both sides are just as equally retarded over there. But I'm just saying I don't believe they're compatible. And I don't care at all. If the Swedish government is allowing in a bunch of mud people from the Middle East to fuck their women and rape their kids, do you really think I'm going to feel sympathy about them leaving a Jewish school open? I don't. I'm sorry.
I understand your point. I understand that it is hard to be sympathetic to, for example, the Swedes when they are engaging in such self-destructive behaviors. That's part of that pathological altruism that I was talking about. But that said, we certainly shouldn't. I mean, given that that's the case, for Jews to be seeing that and to exploit it even further is just...
So you are going to literally find a Jewish person culpable. You're going to be like, it's not that they do it. It's that they work for the people who work for the people who do it. Therefore, it's their fault, but not the...
And if anyone tries to tell those Swedes, hey, you know what? This is what you're doing is wrong. And
you don't
let me finish. You're doing this wrong. And try to reverse that behavior. Jews will shut that down.
How about you don't tell the Swedes anything? You're not Swedish. Just like you shouldn't be telling whites what to do. You're not white. You love telling cultures you don't belong to what to do. And it's sad.
It's totally wrong to tell whites it's totally wrong to tell whites what they should do to survive. That's totally wrong.
From this country when you're one of them. You're one of the people you want ejected. And you say that you want to use a subversive test.
It's not. That's the thing. I'm not subverting them. If I'm telling them what to fucking do to survive, I'm not subverting.
Oh, that's not subversive to tell them.
It's not subversive to tell them what to do to survive.
I agree with Josh on this.
That's retarded, Halsey.
No, it's not retarded.
Yes, that is completely retarded.
Look at you freaking the fuck out. You are idiots who are not yourself. What to do?
Halsey, you still come off as really disingenuous. I can't.
Shit, disingenuous. Yeah. I've heard.
Triggered. Some mass triggers. The majority of the people on the panel are triggered.
How can people
this is Halsey just trying to get a rise out of everyone. Halsey's just trying to get a rise out of everyone. He says that he cares, and sometimes he doesn't care. He goes back and forth, and then he selectively does and says exactly what's necessary to get a freak out. In this case, out of Josh.
That's not a freak out.
I'm just no, but this is what Halsey does. This is what he does.
Wait a minute. Wait, I really am interested in this. I said that white people should be left alone to make their own decisions. I've consistently said that all the time. I believe that you can give them information, but I don't believe you should be telling them what to do. You're talking about implementing laws that are going to affect them. You're talking about security tests that decide who gets in and out of countries. When you're not putting yourself in that same basket, you somehow are giving everybody else the blood test and leaving your blood test out. That is inherently hypocritical to say that my blood is pure, even though it's not, and your blood is not because it is.
I don't care whether I'm pure. I'm saying that I'm not subverting. So you know what?
You know that.
Don't worry about it.
You know that you're not subverting.
Because it's objectively obvious. I'm not.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, am I engaging in any action that's subversive, Halsey?
Yeah, you actually are. You actually are.
What would that be?
Yes, you are. You are supporting a jerk off like Paul Nehlen, and you're putting a target on people's backs by going, look at this fucking asshole who's trying to run us. And then you're sitting there going, no, this is the right guy, even though the guy is an obvious retard. And what I'm saying is you're sitting there going, I'm not subversive. I would never do anything subversive.
I was involved with Paul Nehlen before he kind of lost his mind, okay?
And then you went with him afterwards, too. So if you knew he lost his mind and still told people to vote for him, that is subversive.
No. Because I told him that I would not abandon him. And I did everything I could to keep that promise. It got
him elected after you thought he lost his mind. That's not subversive.
No, that's not subversive.
Yeah, I'm going to back up Joshua on this one, by the way.
when someone loses their mind and you stay committed to getting them elected to Congress, that's not subversive faith. How is that noble?
It wasn't a sudden thing. It was over a period of time that his mindset sort of deteriorated. It wasn't one thing in particular. As it turns out, he makes impulsive decisions. As it turns out, he wasn't able to deal with the stresses of running a campaign with the message that he wanted to send and that he was hell-bent on sending. It wasn't that we encouraged him to go with the message that he wanted to go with. In fact, when he decided that that's the direction he wanted to go in, we said to him very clearly, and it wasn't just me, it was several others said to him, are you sure you want to do this? Because once you're in. You can't, there's no backtracking. He said that's the battle that he wanted to wage. And so we said, okay. As it turns out, when a boomer says that they are prepared to wage the battle against Zog, do not believe them, because they aren't. They just can't comprehend what it entails. There were other circumstances that could not have been predicted at the time, but for example, when you're dealing with that kind of battle, when you're waging that kind of battle, it is essential that you have a good support system in place. In other words, that's really sort of led by your spouse. His wife was not helpful. She was extremely difficult. And I was never actually in Wisconsin to see him personally. He came to Pittsburgh once, but it was for other business. And we had dinner, and that was pretty much, we talked for a while, and that was the one time that I actually met his wife. But other than that, you could tell every time we were on the phone that she was making things extremely difficult for him, and that was taking its toll. The stressors were just too much for him to bear, and it's not surprising that he, just cracked under the pressure. But there are other factors at play as well. Like I said, he was impulsive. He didn't listen when he should have listened. He made some, decisions. He didn't consult before he made really stupid decisions.
He didn't let the Jews control him, basically.
What?
But he's saying basically, like, he didn't listen to his Jewish overlords.
No, he didn't. I mean,
I'm saying you were Paul Neyland's Jewish overlord.
No, I was working.
Are you accusing Josh of being the puppet master?
Well, yeah, I'm saying, like, I mean, you were trying to get Paul Neyland, like, you should love the Jews. We're awesome.
No,
Paul Neyland's wife, like, turned him against the Jews. Like, I'm skeptical about this. Josh. I don't trust these Jews.
No, Paul Neyland turned him against the Jews. Paul Neyland turned against the Jews because he saw that the efforts to, how should I say this?
Derail his campaign?
Yes, were predominantly led by Jews.
Yeah, President Trump.
Bill Kristol.
Yeah, but
John Podhoretz.
President Trump saw that also, but he still loves the Jews because Sheldon Adelson wrote him a check for $100 million, and Jared Kushner is his son-in-law, and it didn't seem to bother him that the majority of Jews are against them.
That the Holodomor was a thing, and he hadn't known that it was before because he had been lied to for 50 years. When he realized all of these things that he hadn't been told about, the programming that people receive throughout their lives in this country, he didn't
know that we were awesome because you would do to convince Paul that we're awesome.
Angry. He had already bought Culture of Critique about a year before he actually said that he was reading it, and he bought it shortly after his trip to Israel. I think he opened it and started to read it, and he put it down because he didn't even understand what was being said. It didn't make any sense to him. About 6 months later, he picked it up again, tried to read it, still didn't make any sense. And then I reached out to him about Shall Not Censor, and he said he really liked it. He saw that it was an important thing and that he wanted to make that a part of his campaign. And around that time, especially once he put out Shall Not Censor, he realized that the criticism that was coming at him, there was a commonality amongst the people that were criticizing him. And what he did was he looked
Yeah,
at
we
that.
know that because Jews are Democrats. Just like there's a commonality of the people accusing President Trump, but it doesn't change the fact that President Trump loves the Jews and he took $100 million from Sheldon Adelson and so on and so on.
He wasn't being attacked by just Democrats in general. This was overwhelmingly Jews that were attacking him. And then he went back.
All those same Jews who attacked me who attacked President Trump.
He looked at his first campaign and he saw the same pattern.
Yes, so what?
That's when it all started to click for him. Then he picked up culture of critique again, and then it made sense.
Yeah, but you were our guy on the inside. To keep Paul in check, and you failed. Instead, you turned against your own people.
And he got very angry.
And it's your fault.
It's not my fault. I didn't.
You were his Jew on the inside, and you were supposed to convince him that we're awesome and he should love the Jews. And instead, he turned you against
after I
your own
started
people.
work on his campaign, and I was working on Shall Not Censor, and that was it. I had nothing to do with it.
So how did he turn you against his own people? Against your own people?
I already didn't like Jews before I didn't try to introduce or red pill Paul Nehlen. He red pilled himself. What you saw was him being red pilled in real time, just by starting to notice certain patterns.
Yeah, 2015, a lot of people woke up. Me too. You could say I got Jew wise.
Yeah, but people had known these patterns for decades. I'm saying you guys might have been out.
No, I would say I would say that the never Trumpers, like the fact that the neocons revealed themselves to be a Jewish bloc to people.
The J left and right attacking Trump as Jews.
Yes, as Jews did way more than that drove audience
attacking
to
Trump
TRS.
as Jews because he is close to, as they perceive it, or feels close to, some semblance of European nationalism.
It's nothing
with
new. I'm saying
fascist
just
in.
because you don't know American history and the role that Jews have played historically doesn't mean that it's the
role
more educated Americans were familiar with the role.
Weren't really present in America before 1945. Okay,
and
they really had very little of a presence. So quit pretending like the country was built by Jews or something like that.
I also want to just go ahead and chime in for just a moment. I was not in any way Jew-wise for the majority of my life. And in fact, by a stunning coincidence, one of the key people that got me thinking about the JQ was you, doooovid. It was actually you, and it's how you present yourself and what you advocate. It was you, actually.
Well, thank you. I'm glad I turned you into a Jew lover.
Eke, is that how you would describe it?
I don't think that's the four-letter word that I would use.
Okay, but we're diverse people, so you had your buddy Josh, saying like you're a Jew lover because you love Josh.
I do love Josh, and I love you too, doooovid. I do want you to know.
Well, can
you're
you
my
love
friend and
Josh
my
without being a Jew lover?
They love me in spite.
Does your love of Josh?
Right,
I don't think so. I think like loving Josh.
Actually,
once you love Josh, you're probably going to love me too.
Let me be really. I really want to be very clear about this one single point, and this actually is important to me. Okay, I do not like Josh in spite of his being Jewish. I like Josh because he is driven by ethics and duty and goodness.
He's a truth seeker. He's a truth seeker.
I like Josh. On the other hand, referring to you, doooovid, the reason that I do not like you terribly much is because you are every bit a subversive, and you do everything you can to undermine my civilization, and your programs, the things that you advocate, will result in the on a long enough timeline, the genocide of my people. So for me, this has nothing to do specifically in terms of my liking the two of you relative to each other. It has nothing to do with any genetic component. It has more to do with a behavioral program. However, that said, doooovid has been very explicit and painfully repetitive about stating what he thinks Jews ought to behave like on a larger net level. And so only going according to what doooovid is saying, yes, I can say in all honesty that as where my eyes were closed, they are open.
You know, and ultimately, it really does boil down to behavior. It's not as though all of these various groups in the world sort of rolled, or like spun a wheel and it randomly came up. Like, who are we going to hate? And they randomly came up Jews. There's no sort of instinctual reason why people would hate Jews. The reason Jews are hated by so many people around the world is because of their group behavior.
You never read the Bible? Or so like you didn't study history? You think like they're like from the Egyptians to the Assyrians to the Greeks to the Romans, and then like, you know, just the modern things, if we weren't liberal, all of a sudden the Goyim would love us.
You know, if you were a tenant and you were evicted from 109 different buildings throughout history, what, you know, it's like, if that were the case, would you say that, you know, it's the reason is because everyone else just irrationally hated you? Or would you say that it's possible that, you know, you were the problem? Jews,
well, yeah, it's definitely rational. There's definitely rational reasons.
Jews listen to that and they say,
it's
absolutely everyone else is bigoted. That's
not a new phenomenon due to our liberalism.
They don't even consider the possibility that it's them, that their behavior is what leads to it. And they don't try to remedy that behavior. They simply go to another place and engage in the exact same patterns of behavior.
Yeah, because that's who we are. Just like you naturally, even though right now for extennuating circumstances, is it who we are? Get back in with the Jewish community.
But is it who we are? Because I'm not like that.
Yes, you are.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are.
We can do that. We can do this all day, but no. And
you should get a glass of water first.
Yeah.
In fact, everyone should just go take a quick little water break, cool down.
No,
Maybe
you
had some things to say to each other.
At all. I love Josh. I mean, he's my fellow Jewish brother, and I don't mind him sharing the opinions. I'm happy to argue with him in a friendly relation.
I would gas you before most whites would.
When you're saying
out of love.
I don't know you, but you think you would actually stand a chance against me in a physical fight?
No, I would. No, I mean, I would gas you. Like I would have you executed in a heartbeat before most whites would. Yeah.
Okay.
That's so we're not. Don't say. Well,
you're
my Jewish brother. No, I would.
Paul Nalen. I mean, I don't mind. This is free speech.
I don't think that I was. I mean, Paul Nalen and I really didn't discuess.
I love the Jewish
issues relating to Jews. I mean, we discussed censorship on the internet.
Yeah, that's why I said I don't even mind. Free speech, even minor incitement to violence, even blatant incitement to violence. I could see.
He didn't say. Hold on. He didn't say he was going to gas you. He said that he would do it before other people would. That didn't mean he was going to do it right now, or that there was a credible threat. Like if we look under SMACA, there is not a credible threat.
It was just me saying
the alt-right and all the people are too soft-core. Saying Josh is like, as a Jew, he knows that we're way worse than those guys think we are.
I know what Jews are capable
he's one of us.
I know how they think, and I know what they're capable of, and I know that what they're doing is evil.
But the only reason you know that is because you're one of us. I mean, you admit to that. You're saying you know.
I don't think that was in dispute. The behavior is the problem.
Yeah, I mean, our behavior is generally pretty good. Like, didn't you read the Kaufman's critique?
Oh my God!
I mean, Josh, did you read the Kaufman's critique? I'm serious. Did you not read the Kaufman's critique? Did Paul Nelen read the Kaufman's critique? I mean, you're a scholar. I could understand, like, most people on the alt-right or like Hiltern, they're not going to read the Kaufman's critique. But I'm saying, Josh, you never heard of Nate Kaufman's? You didn't watch the Luke Ford stream? You didn't see the interview, and you didn't read his definitive takedown of Kevin McDonald?
There is no definitive takedown of Kevin McDonald.
Yes, there is.
Kevin McDonald's exactly right.
He's called Nate Kaufman's. Right, those people did not directly address Nate Kaufman's reply to Culture of Critique. I mean, Brundle, right?
Do you think
we were just talking about this last night?
Do you think that these ideas that I've been saying here, do you think that I've picked these up from any kind of book? that I like read them in a book, and so that's how it.
I've never read K-Mac. I say that right now.
I do. I got it. I mean, I got a huge collection. I'm like, I probably read more, God forbid, anti-Semitic books than even Patrick Little or Paul Nealon.
Everything that I believe,
like 100 of them.
What I believe because I processed it up here. I came to the conclusions on my own. I don't need someone to tell me in a book why I should think the way I do.
Oh, you're just the smartest guy ever.
I'm pretty fucking smart. Yes.
You know the Jewish.
I thought we were all. I thought we were all smart, super smart, right?
Well, so you did read the Kaufman's critique.
Why would I read someone else's views when I already know who's right? When I already know what the answer is? Why would I need? Why would I need validation from somebody else?
Look, how do you know? I mean, you know because the blood is.
I know.
Close to you.
I know because I've argued it successfully here. You certainly don't have any kind of decent response to anything we've been saying. So.
Well, I mean, you argue it successfully because like half the viewers of the stream are neo-Nazis.
It has nothing to do with what anyone else thinks. I know.
Hold on. We do not have neo-Nazis in this audience. You have not seen any gas decays coming from the audience.
In the audience.
We're very polite. We're very polite here.
Well, I'm saying in the chat, but in the audience.
Yeah, who are these neo-Nazis you're talking about, doooovid?
I mean, plus it's pretty funny when people say, gas decays, because the fact is there were no gas chambers actually, and that's a whole lie. And, you know what's funny? Well, let's talk about my experience when I started to. There was that because I've said this before, but most people don't know when I started. What it was that sort of what got me thinking about things and noticing things. Well, remember that there's that meme where you know what a smuggy is. A smuggy is one of those. It's like a meme where like it's Microsoft Paint and like there's like a stick figure, and they're saying something like some sort of. They're also called the counter signal memes. You may have heard of. Have you ever seen those?
Yeah.
Something it'll be like some leftist talking point that sounds ridiculous.
Yeah, and like it overplays it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there was this one where because all of my we've been programmed for a long time to hear things like I'm 6 million, and you don't really think about it. You're just told it, and you're told it so many times it just becomes you're just it becomes something that you're just sort of taught.
You take as a given.
Yeah, and so I saw this one smuggy where this guy goes, "We can't possibly deport 11 million illegals. That's impossible. How could we possibly do that?" And the other person says, "Why are you denying the Holocaust?" And I saw that, and it got me to thinking, wait a second. We have people that are saying that it's impossible to round up and deport 11 million people on no particular timeline. It take as long as possible, but with no particular time limitation, it would be impossible to do that. But I'm supposed to believe that 6 million Jews were rounded up, sent to camps, systematically executed in bizarre ways.
Oh my God! Buckle in! All right, dude.
Well, and if there was leftovers, it was not even just six. Like
in a period of less than basically
3
about
years.
7 years or something like that. Yeah. Okay. Now we have a problem.
You're saying you used to be a liberal.
I'm saying a smuggy.
You were always conservative.
No, I was always conservative, but I was more of a, I was probably something closer to, just sort
neocon.
No, but more like a, what's the word I'm looking for?
Paleo conservative.
Something like, I don't know, something like, something like an alt-light type person. You know what I mean? Like something like Pasobiec or, for lack of a better example, because he's such a piece of shit. But something like that. Like just you're sort of your typical like.
Were you a Trump supporter?
Oh yeah, I predicted Trump back in mid 2014. I predicted Trump before anyone. I'll show you guys the tweet sometime.
Okay, well, not before Rothschild Bank.
Why did you think that?
Because he was the only one that could possibly have beaten Hillary Clinton. He's the only one with the celebrity power to have done it. I was like, in fact, I wrote to him in a tweet. I said, You're the only one that can beat her. You should please consider running for president. He retweeted it. That's why it's, you know, it's out there. I'll put it in my on my timeline. But that was mid 2014.
So you were just anti-immigration, and you start looking into.
Of course, I don't want to live amongst non-whites. That's, you know, of course.
So, I mean, basically, you were like Paul Nealon, and you started looking into immigration. You saw like, oh my God, the Jews are basically.
No,
like,
I didn't. It didn't.
Critique, or
no, it didn't start. It did. Well, it didn't. No, it didn't start with.
I mean, or you knew it because you were brought up as a Jew.
It didn't start with the Jews are behind the immigration problem. It started with the Jews just clearly totally lied about this whole Holocaust thing. We got a whole bunch of lies out there, and I can't make sense of this. What else is going on? One thing leads to another. You start figuring out, hey, there's a lot of connections here between.
You don't know Holocaust survivors? I'm saying, like, you're a Jew. You didn't grow up listening to Holocaust survivors.
I have no doubt that there were Jews that were put into camps.
You didn't. I mean, I've heard hundreds of stories and say you weren't that Jewish that you grew up listening to local Holocaust survivors.
And I was totally taken by those people. I was totally taken in. I was duped. They could have told me anything. I probably would have believed it. Because when you're not thinking about these things closely, when they say 6 million people, you don't think about what are the logistics of that. You just think, oh my God, that's so awful. Oh my God. And when you start to think critically about it, though, it all falls apart. I mean, just the idea of you're telling me that they're going to use some sort of, you know, rather than just shoot them all dead, they're going to like put them in gas chambers. And there's the whole cremation thing. And the math there is, these aren't magic ovens. It couldn't possibly have worked. This kind of stuff, they've made it illegal to even talk about it.
Yeah.
There's no other historical event.
In Europe, not in America.
It doesn't matter.
But in America, only in Europe.
The fact that it's illegal anywhere is a huge red flag. There's no other historical event that is illegal to talk about. That is not something that is conducive or that suggests that it is based upon truth. It is something that suggests that if you questioned it, it would rapidly fall apart.
Yeah, I mean, that's like we don't have to argue this point. We just want to hear your story. Something like that. Like if I was a normie and if I was looking at policy and if I was, you know, like just a slight little bit more inquisitive than the average person, I would be inclined to agree with what Josh's saying. And as a matter of fact, I think it's definitely worth noting. Sorry, doooovid.
Yeah, but obviously I disagree with you. I specialize somewhat in the Holocaust, but I'm more interested in just hearing your story.
I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are. Why are there laws like banning the discussion of it? See, that's what I think is bad. Let's
not get derailed on a Holocaust discussion. Let's just hear Josh's red pill story.
No, go ahead.
So if you think about it, what caused this sort of chain reaction? I mean, for some people, it's one. You know, for Paul Nealon, it was the fact that he happened to see that the names of the people who were attacking him the most during his campaigns, and he sort of put 2 and 2 together that way. For me, it was a smuggie that made me realize, wait a second, these numbers don't make sense. And from there, it's just things rapidly fall apart. You realize that you were lied to for a very long time. It makes you angry. It leads you to investigate further. That leads you to more findings. You start to see patterns of behavior. You start to see them everywhere. You start to see all of the pushing of the race mixing. And then you see who's behind that. And then you start to see all of these immigration problems, and you see who's behind that. And it always seems to, you know, just noticing a lot of patterns.
You know what I noticed is every Jew in the chat, that I recognize and on the panel is very anti-Josh. What is that about, you think, Josh? What do you think is going on?
Well, obviously, you know, I don't expect Jews
I'm
to
not
be
anti-Josh. I disagree with you strongly, but
I don't expect Jews to like me.
And I'm willing to work together with you on your internet Bill of Rights, although I strongly disagree with you about what we're talking about.
Well, I mean, that's great because we won't even be able to talk about it.
Okay, but I just clarifying. I'm not against you. I'm here to help you out with the main reason you came on the show. But
don't do it for me. Don't do it because you want it to be successful
for you. I'm saying I'm doing it because I agree with
because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, but I mean, I strongly disagree with you about your opinion on the Jews. But we don't have to spend the show debating that. Although that's what I specialize in.
I mean, I don't expect because of my opinions about Jews. I don't expect Jews to like me. But I like you anyways. I think that part of it, the reason why they don't, why many don't like me is because they resent being, found out. Or if they are, if they.
What's being found out?
If they aren't trying to hide it, and some are more brazen than others, they resent.
Yeah, but anti-Semitism has been around for thousands of years.
I don't. That's not a. That's a Marxist term. No, counter-Semitism. The norm is not Semitism. Semitism would be the opposite of anti-Semitism, and Semitism would be to be pro-Jew, to be Jew first.
Pat Little's famous for pointing out these ideas existed among the Romans. Maybe Pat Little sits around reading Tacitus at night in Cicero, and he knows what the Romans said about us. But basically, your complaints have been waged against you, our common complaints for thousands of years.
And yet, Jews continue to engage in the same destructive behaviors.
Because we're largely beneficial and good for society.
For Jews, not for society.
No, for society. That's why countries invite us in for 100.
It could not possibly be beneficial to society. It could not possibly be beneficial to a white society to import large numbers of browns and blacks with low IQs. There's just
are generally very accepting and welcoming to Jews, and generally white society invite Jews in.
And Jews will exploit that by destroying them.
Sweden wants Jews there so bad that they made a
What better way to thank those white people that gave you that home than to deplete the percentage of white people in that country from over 90% to less than 60% in about a generation?
Well, the Swedish people love us more than any other people, meaning that they're even allowing us special exceptions to keep us in their country.
The Swedes,
they think we're pretty good for them.
The Swedes,
that's why they're making special exceptions to keep us there.
That's the Swedes being suicidal. A good person would see that and would say, you know what? Maybe it's not good for us to be in Sweden because we're going to destroy them. Or maybe they actually are intending to destroy them and don't care. Either way,
they're
evil for that. They need to go elsewhere.
Clearly, there's legitimacy to a lot of complaints about Jews, but Jews are relatively an exceptional people, and we've done a lot of good for the world, and that's why we're around.
Why can't they? And why can't they do that in their own country?
Well, we do. We could do it. We could do it in India, and the U.S., and Europe, and China.
Well, how about just in your own country? Because why can't you do it in Africa? Do that with all the black countries in Africa.
We do. I'm saying Israel's more.
Do you though?
I've never been to Africa, but yeah.
Well, are Jews really looking to diversify? You
don't follow Israeli politics. I could explain to you Israeli politics, but Israel has had a pivot to Africa.
I'm not talking about Israeli politics. I'm talking about how about American Jewish politics? How about they just
I'm saying American Jews are pretty concerned about.
Let's diversify Sierra Leone. Let's move to Sierra Leone and diversify it because, they don't have enough exposure to Jews and they need to be multicultural, and Jews should have a leading role in that.
Yeah, I train rabbis that go to Africa. We got a local,
not just to visit Africa. To live in Africa and to flood it with
to be a rabbi. Yeah,
non-blacks.
Someone from Detroit, an alumni from the Detroit International Rabbinic Training Center, is now a rabbi in Kenya.
Oh, that's great. A rabbi. That's right. I'm talking about.
Well, I say someone I personally know.
Yeah, on a massive scale. Now let's scale it up. Okay, scale it up. Let's make it a huge operation to just fundamentally change the makeup of those countries. I'm talking. What percent black is what percent black is Somalia right now?
Because you're saying just a Jew by nature because he's a Jew is going to be subversive like that, but you
Well,
don't accept it for yourself.
I don't know. Is he being subversive? I'm talking about why isn't he doing in those countries what he wants to see done here?
Well, generally we do. I mean, because Jews are different in different lands, but
I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it.
Well, because are you an expert in Africa?
I'm not seeing it, and I don't have to be an expert in Africa to not see it. It's pretty obvious. Why aren't they doing that in Africa? Because the Africans would not stand for it, because they are. Well, they're
if you want
third world fearals, and they would react very badly to it, and they don't want to live amongst people that are not black.
What's the most common thing that Jews do in Africa? And generally, it's like training people for agriculture, building hospitals, and selling and training people how to use weapons. So, I mean, unfortunately, one of the biggest things that Jews
do. But why not? But what about the diversity? I thought diversity was super important.
Well, I'd assume that Jews promote diversity wherever they go.
Do they?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. And Jews are generally pro-diversity. Even Israeli weapons dealers are probably generally pro-diversity.
I'm not seeing it. In Israel, for example, I'm not really seeing it, because they say things like it's crucial that Israel remain a Jewish state. It's crucial that it remain a super majority. Oh, our own country. That's an interesting phrase you use.
Yeah, because the self-interest of the Jews in our own country, that's why Israel theologically was a mistake. Mm-hmm. Saying the creation of Israel theologically was a mistake. We shouldn't have our own country.
But they do.
But once we have our own country,
they do. So they'll take it, and they're not just going to take it. They're not just going to take that. They're going to take everyone else's country too, right?
No. But we have the right to live there, and I mean, generally,
why?
Wait, and to be a Jew
we have the right
in that country.
We have the right to live there, but why?
But it depends on the country's constitution and the makeup and the laws of the.
Well, you weren't really saying it based on the. Well, you weren't really saying it based on the Constitution. You were saying no. You were sort of saying it in some sort of general, sort of.
Well, God's law. Because God's law trumps
God's law, but they don't believe in.
Who's they?
Non-Jews don't believe
most non-Jews believe in God. I'm saying, in fact,
but not God's law as Jews see it. So, why
maybe
say you have this right that they don't even recognize to live there?
Well, because most of them do. I'm saying, relatively, Jews are probably the most likely of all people to be invited into countries.
Invited, so to be a guest.
Well, even to settle there and to build up our institutions. I mean, generally, Jews have a pretty easy time getting into country, more so than America. Saying, I know I work with Jewish missionaries, and saying North Korea would probably let in Jewish missionaries.
They get into the country, and they keep on getting admitted. They get in, and then they set up shop, and then they eventually get expelled. And this has happened 109 different times, and you're not seeing any.
Well, because that's the nature of the Jew. I mean,
yes, there you go.
Are you an atheist? You don't believe in God?
I wouldn't say that.
Maybe you never read Moses?
I would say I'm probably more agnostic than anything. I'm not sure. There's a lot of reasons to believe that there's some sort of creator out there, but I don't.
You don't believe in Moses?
Way of knowing that.
You don't believe in Moses?
I don't know what that means, really. What believe in him meaning?
The prophecies, the Bible, the 5 books of Moses.
A lot of it, I don't know. It's hard to say. I do know that it's really, I'm just not seeing why that means that Jews should be.
I love the Jews. I'm happy to defend the Jewish people. So if you just want to make your attacks against the Jewish people so I can defend them, I'm happy to do that.
You don't have to defend the Jewish people in the sense that it would be one thing if they were just sort of living in their own country, but they're trying to destroy other countries.
What do you think motivates them? Josh.
I don't, you could say a whole lot of different things. I don't think that very many of those things are good. I think that ultimately it, on balance, the intentions are not benevolent. Because it's impossible to consider that whites allowed them into their homelands, and in less than 100 years, they are leading the effort, successfully leading the effort to soft genocide whites. There's no mix of motivations that on balance come out to something benevolent, just not even close. I'm sure that, providing for their own people and other, self-sufficiency and improvement of their own, that kind of thing. I'm sure that those are, in a vacuum, those are perhaps benevolent motivations, but the way that they manifest themselves in countries that are not Jewish countries, in other words, in those host countries, the countries that host Jews, there's just no excuse for the behaviors that we're seeing. It really doesn't matter ultimately what they are, just that the result is something that just it can't be tolerated, because to allow it to happen is to allow, for example, the white race to be genocided. And
that would be terrible. Doovid, why? What's your motivation for the soft genocide of whites in their homelands?
Damn, it's just a stupid question.
I've ever heard. That's the ultimate.
Yeah, I mean, we've already spent like 100 hours debating immigration and multiculturalism.
Well, here let's go ahead and let's rephrase the question. Why do you support policies that would ethnically cleanse white people from their own homelands on a net level?
I mean, you can't like go Jordan Peterson and like steelman my arguments. You guys aren't even. I mean, Josh is at least a lawyer. I assume he could at least make an attempt to steelman my argument.
Okay. Let me steelman your argument. Okay, Doovid, what is the motivation for enhancing and enriching the lives of white people by culturally enriching them, by exposing them to diverse peoples?
I prefer third world funerals.
But I'm steelmanning them, with vibrant diversity. Why do Jews want to make our lives better by bringing all these Rainbow Nation together?
You guys, I mean, just as an intellectual exercise, I think I could steelman any of your guys' sides, but you guys are intellectually incapable of steelmanning my argument.
All right, steelman your argument. Steelman. All right.
No, he can't answer the question. The reason he can't answer the question is because either
he's supposed to be steelmanning my argument and asking me questions.
Or if he cannot answer the question,
I'm too low IQ.
Especially, I mean, you're right. I mean, he is too low IQ because we spoke about this for 50 hours, and you're saying even though we've talked about this for 50 hours now, you can't even steelman my argument.
So,
okay,
what's the answer then? But what's the answer? Just answer the question.
Well, I mean, why would I? Just because we've had arguments for tens of hours, you really
But you haven't talked to Josh before.
So just answer the question. It's so simple. We're so low IQ. Answer the question for all of us low IQ people. Go.
I didn't realize that you guys were so low IQ until this moment.
You dumb goy. Just steelman his position. Christ.
So obviously, you can't answer a simple question. That's terrible. That's awful, Doovid. How terrible. Oh well.
No. All right. Let me try to steelman it again.
Okay. I mean, it's not my argument, but just the argument.
I'm not sure what does it mean to steelman. So I'm not
to make someone's a straw man would be to make a
shitty argument,
indefensible position. Right. It's make the best argument that he can possibly
straw man me when you say instead of saying that I'm promoting multicultural and compassion to refugees, but you say I'm trying to genocide the white people.
I didn't. That wasn't my steel man. I said you were trying to enhance the lives of whites. You were trying to.
That's straw man. When you straw man me, instead of saying that I am pro immigration and multiculturalism, you say I'm pro genocide.
So you're still not answering the question though. So okay, continue.
Okay, I've answered 100 times, specifically with you two. When you straw man, it's when you, from the best of your ability, give the argument to the opposing side. And you look, Let me think
Okay.
about it from this person's perspective
still not
and make
answering
the argument that they make.
Well, I did try my best. I did try my best.
Yeah.
I said I tried my
And
best. I said you
why
want to
Jordan
culturally
Peterson
enrich us.
Gets paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to speak in auditoriums, and we're like a small micro stream begging a few dollars.
Yeah, and you're still not answering the question, so that's fine.
Dude, why do you support the policies that you do? I'm not even going to characterize them. Like,
Why not?
Well, are you serious? I mean, are you saying it because you want me to say to Josh, or are you saying because you
Dude, we have new look.
Warren-
No, hold on, dude. Let me put it to you this way.
Because you weren't
I'm looking
paying
at the
attention
chat. I'm looking at the chat. I see at least 4 names that I don't recognize. There are new people watching. You're interacting with Josh. You never interacted before. State your rationale. Let Josh respond to it. You know, do we have to have a lesson on how to micro stream? Like, do you need a lesson on how to be a productive streamer?
Well, yeah, we probably do need to talk about that.
All right, well, let's talk about this question and use it as an example.
I mean, you want to turn this into a debate about immigration?
No.
No, I just wanted to.
If the policies are so beneficial, why not support them in Israel? And why not support them doubly?
No, he does support them in Israel.
Do you?
Yeah,
Yes.
he does.
He
He
is
does.
consistent.
No,
He is
no,
consistent.
no, he does. Trust me. As do many Jews, as a matter of fact.
So
No, he does. He does. He's not.
why aren't they taking the people that they're sending here?
Dude, Israel has more freaking
just like-
random.
just like
Israel,
Israel-
listen, no, stop. Israel has more random freaking sub-Saharan Africans walking around than any Arab country, just about. So don't even say that. Like Israel does have more freaking refugee type.
But I'm not just talking about just more than other Arab countries. I'm talking about why aren't you taking them all?
Because I don't, just like you don't control. Even though you're a Jew,
but
you
we're
don't control
taking
the
pressure
Jewish
off
community.
of Doovid. We're
I don't
taking pressure
control
off
the
of
Israeli
Doovid, and I
community just
really
'cause I have my
want to get an
opinion on
answer.
Israel
I want to get
doesn't
an
mean you're
answer
gonna
from
listen to me.
Doovid.
Why are you-
We're taking pressure off of Doovid.
why are
I want to
you
get an answer for why he supports the policies that he supports. I really want to get an answer to that, just for the people who are new to the stream.
Of immigration and multiculturalism.
Yes.
I mean, I support being compassionate, specifically as a Jew. Compassion to the stranger is one of our strongest values. And I believe multiculturalism is good for society. It's necessary to keep America competitive. It produces intellectual
lower IQ
excellent.
Wait,
innovate-
Why would lower IQ people keep us competitive?
Well, I didn't say lower IQ. I mean, generally, immigrants are higher IQ.
Generally, that's ridiculous. No, they're not.
But I mean, the average Arab in IQ, the average Arab in America has a higher IQ than the average white.
We're not talking about Arabs right now. There's nobody from Somalia that would be beneficial.
Somalians aren't Arabs.
That's right.
But I'm saying the average Arab in the U.S. has a higher IQ than the average white.
But that doesn't matter. When we're
Indian,
talking-
the average
that
Chinese
doesn't matter
person, the
in
average
Minnesota.
Japanese person.
Yeah, but that's not who. But Minnesota's not being flooded with Arabs. They're being flooded with Somalians. Maine is being flooded with Somalians. Somalia's average IQ is dismally low.
67.
That's
Yes, I mean, there's multiple prongs.
that's literally retarded.
There's the benefits of multiculturalism on the upper level intellectual scale, like
There's
scientists.
no upper intellectual
business.
scale at upper level of the intellectual scale in Somalia. That doesn't exist.
I'm not talking about Somalians. I'm talking about multiculturalism and immigration.
I'm talking about Somalians.
Have you-
Why are you bringing them here?
Because I mean, thank God I took high birth. I went to university, and most of the immigrants I know are high IQ and wealthy.
That's a real great anecdotal story there.
Where'd you go to university? Yeah, I mean, there weren't too many Somalians at the university. I mean, I did know a few Somalians at
Why are you
university,
doing it at all?
but there was a lot of Indians, there was a lot of Arabs, there was
Wait,
a lot
so
of
you're-
Chinese, there was a lot of Malaysians.
Just make a.
Why-
This is really funny though. Doovid's entire immigration policy is based on a couple of people that he met.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's multiple prong. So I mean, there's the benefits of multiculturalism for producing intellectual excellence, business excellence, innovation, technology excellence. I went over Brundlefly. I have videos on my
Did
channel.
whites need
I
non-whites
covered
to go to the moon?
this.
Did whites need non-whites to go to the moon?
Well, yeah, I mean, because it was based on the science that was brought into Europe from Arabs and Muslims.
No. That's a bunch of
Oh my
crap.
God.
It isn't. Newton said he stood on the shoulders of the giants and saying, if it wasn't for the Arabs,
Oh
you'd still
my
be using
God.
He was stood on the
Way
shoulders
to
of the
lose
Nephilim.
credibility, dude.
I was
Way to
saying, if
lose
you-
credibility.
But it's just a fact. It's saying if it wasn't for Arabs, you'd still be using the Roman numeral system.
Doovid, that has nothing to do with what happened in the 1960s. Okay.
Of course it does.
We're talking about going to the moon. We're not talking about things that happened, hundreds or thousands of
Was
years.
Euclid pivotal in going to the moon? If Euclid have never lived,
Oh
would
my
man had-
God,
man had-
Doovid, that is such bullshit, and you know it. Oh my God.
You're not a scientist. I'm saying, we
I'm not a scientist. I don't need to be.
I'm a scientist, and we
No,
base
that's
things
not
off of
bullshit.
discoveries of previous generations, just like
Right.
No,
Just
no,
like
oh,
already- just
God.
like-
every grade
and
school
we don't-
person
and
learns
we don't need-
Euclid.
and we don't need to bring other people from other countries and cultures over
Could you
here
study algebra?
in
Could you
order
get to the
in order to enjoy ethnic food, because we already have the recipes.
But you do need algebra. I'm saying like Brundle flies in
And
Yeah,
accountant.
we have it, Doovid. We already have it. We already have algebra, Doovid. We already
Okay,
have
so
it.
go thank your local Arab.
No,
Next
I'm
time
not
you
going
use
to, because
algebra,
my
go
local
thank your
no,
local
Doovid.
Arab.
No, my local
I'll write
Arab did not invent
and I'll
algebra,
send it to
Doovid.
them, and it'll be flown over there in aviation technology that whites created, because Arabs can't even figure out how to get out of the frickin' Stone Age these days.
Yeah, Doovid, your average Arab did not invent algebra. I don't think you understand that.
Yeah, but I saying your average Arab has a higher IQ than your average white here in America.
That's factually incorrect.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, we look it up, but they definitely make more money.
Please do it. No, do it now. Go, do it.
I have these on my channel. I mean, me and
Yeah,
Brenda
do it.
went
Go,
through these
do it now.
statistics.
Do it. Do it. Prove me wrong. Go, do it.
You want me to pop up the Pew survey?
In their own countries, when there's a whole bunch of them, they come out to a much lower average IQ. This all makes
85.
sense.
The average IQ of Arabs is
When you
85.
transport them here, all of a sudden the average IQ seems to go up above whites, which is what?
No, the only reason, what Doovid is relying on is that before 1965, we had a very intensive immigration policy that actually would get the upper tier of various groups into our countries. What he's relying on, what Doovid is relying on, is statistics and information that is literally older than I am.
Why is it okay to be draining those countries of their talent?
No, they're modern. I mean, the Pew survey is
Supremacy.
We're basically, so what you're saying is let's strip mine those countries of all of their high IQ people to the extent that they have them.
Well,
And
okay, you keep on getting
all
off
of this
point.
shit.
You want to argue these point by point, but I mean, there's a lot of benefits to multiculturalism. Did you go to university?
No, all right, yeah, all right.
Yeah, yes.
That's your big thing. It's a plea to authority now. That's what you're relying on, Doovid? Okay.
And you know why?
Well, there's benefits to low wage immigration also, in the fact of people doing jobs that other people don't want, filling geographical area, increasing population.
You don't have to increase population. Why?
There's different opinions on the benefit of whether should America shoot to have 400 or 500 million people, or do you want thinner population? But there's certainly many benefits to immigration and multiculturalism, and there might be problems with it also. Obviously, it doesn't mean open borders.
Their own people. If they need more people, can't they just make their own?
Well, a combination of everything. Yeah, sure.
Can't they just make their own?
I have to. I'm sorry to say, but I absolutely must get going.
You're not the
Let me just go ahead and say, Josh.
Let's wrap this up. This has been.
Yeah, I got
every stream. I'm saying we've argued multiculturalism.
No, I know this is probably. Is Babs? Are you there? Where's Babs? Okay, on a 1 to 10 scale, before you go, how would you rate this stream in the history of the BRUNDLECAST?
Well, this has been one of the more entertaining streams that I've been on. So I'm gonna say a solid 8 and change, actually. Yeah, okay. I liked it a lot. It was great.
And you're gonna be streaming on your channel in 40 minutes or so.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's not going to be half as entertaining. I'm probably just going to. My voice is wrecked right now. I'm probably just going to stream a bunch of goddamn albums or something, But whatevs. Vaporwave for life, bro. It's going to happen.
Hello. Hey,
Hello?
Babs. So we're gonna close out. We're gonna 1 to 10 scale, how would you rate this in the history of the Brundlecast?
11.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
This was a great entry into the Brundlecast
Yeah,
archive.
and I gotta say, Josh, one of the biggest things is I don't think anyone's ever really definitively like BTFO'd Halsey. It took a Jew to do it, and I applaud you.
I made my promise to, when I was on Twitter to only, to try to tone things down. And I guess that just, if you try to stop yourself there, it comes out elsewhere. And I guess that's what happened here.
Dude, you're a savage beast.
Just boiled up and, but
oh my God,
I had a really good I had a really good time. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, dude, this was shit, man. If you want to come on again, like you just
man.
Anytime.
Josh, if you're interested, I'm going to be hosting a live stream afterwards. If you and even doooovid or anyone else would like to join, feel free to.
I am actually. I'm
got to get going. Yeah. That's fair. I mean, listen to your voice.
Sometime in the future, though, we should definitely. Anytime, man.
This is what we do.
Get a massage. Argue
the JQ here. We basically talk about Jews all day, every stream, nonstop.
We talk about other things sometimes.
But, I do actually. Almost everyone here probably supports your effort in terms of.
No, actually, yeah. To the SMACA thing, which I barely remember it now.
I know, right?
Oh my God!
I still have that note from earlier. I'm like, talk about antitrust. We didn't get to that. We got sidetracked for a little bit.
Yeah, I want to hear your thoughts. That's what we're going to pick up, because that's what I wanted to hear is your thoughts on antitrust. For sure. Let's put that in the book for next time.
Yeah. Just put a bookmark in it.
Got it.
As Greg Conti would say. All right, doooovid, final words.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, although the stream was good, we didn't talk about micro streaming and improving our streams. And long term, like if you take this down anyways, like it's probably not watchable for a second time because we have to actually work on our production level and we have to have the talks about how to be good streamers, and hopefully we'll have time to do that.
It's funny you say that, because there's multiple people in the chat that are like, I'm definitely watching this again. Like, this is gonna get clipped. Like, I'm gonna talk to the clippers.
Clip the hell out of this.
Either way,
this is gonna be clipped. This
either
is gonna
way,
be like,
stop arguing about Jews for like a few seconds and just talk about.
Dude, we were talking about SMACA, and then I don't even know. I
can't. Was basically arguing about Jews.
Why? Because Jews are behind all censorship efforts.
I mean, the whole purpose of SMACA is like counter-Semitism, right?
No, I think the whole point is free speech. It's free speech,
which is in itself counter-Semitism. I guess.
Oh my!
Some may see it that way.
And so we've come full circle.
Yeah. What a beautiful night! What a beautiful night! Yeah, doooovid.
We all know how much everyone loves the Jews and loves hearing about them. Right. That we have to improve our streaming quality so that you people will be able to hear about the Jews.
Yeah, some could say we are chosen.
Yeah. Hopefully, YouTube will allow this to exist. This stream to stay up.
Don't worry about that. I'm saying Sergey Brim is a highest alumni, and doooovid was there defending highest, so I assume it stays.
All right, so on that note, I want to thank everybody for watching. Tomorrow night, our guest, Josh Neal, something happened. He's not going to be able to make it, so we're going to figure something out. Maybe we'll do. doooovid owes me a degeneracy stream. He has to dress me down for being a little foul-mouthed on some other streams. So I think we're going to do that tomorrow night. And Friday night, we have E. Michael Jones. And shit, maybe we'll bring Josh back for Saturday if he's up for it.
Yeah, and if you guys want to get me off the show, all you have to do is donate large money to Brundle, and then he will consider it.
Yeah.
Everything's
like
like
yeah, please. I will.
Everything's like racketeering with you.
The $20 super chat, like Brundle would me in a second for a $20 super chat.
Yeah. I will spiritually gas doooovid over and over again.
All right, guys.
All right, guys. Good night. Good night.
Yeah,
Thanks
all
for
right.
watching,
Thank
everybody.
you, everyone.